Ajay?
Yes?
Awesome. Oh, just making sure you've been listening.
After the tremendous success of Far Cry 3, which broke the sales record of the franchise, Ubisoft now stood at a crossroads with the next Far Cry installment, making something entirely different, which has been a tradition with the franchise, or make another game just like Far Cry 3. Ubisoft chose the latter, and this would cement Far Cry as a franchise, as it would start the slow but upcoming stagnation. Because remember, up until now, every subsequent Far Cry installment had been widely different. For example, the first game was a B action movie with mutants as enemies, to the ultra serious, minimalistic and brutal Far Cry 2, to the latest installment Far Cry 3, which had a great villain, an interesting location, story, characters, and overall a really fun time. Far Cry 4 is often seen by many as the best Far Cry game in the franchise due to it improving on pretty much everything from Far Cry 3 and the impeccable performance by Troy Baker as Pagan Min.
He does exactly what I do, but better.
Although there were many improvements, there were also many shortcomings regarding its characters, not understanding certain aspects of Far Cry 3 and what made it great in the first place. But before we get to those points, let's take a look into how Far Cry 4 came to be and what the story and setting of this wonderful game will bring. Welcome to Kyrat, and may Pagan's light shine upon you all.
We don't have time for tourists.
The development of Far Cry 4 started just after the shipping of Assassin's Creed 3 in late 2012. The main idea for the game was to initially be a continuation of Far Cry 3, although I have no idea where the story of Far Cry 3 would even go, because it had a perfect ending with no really loose plot points, so they decided to scrap the concept early on. Well, until the DLC for Far Cry 6 that is, because money. The development team was split into two main groups. The leading team, Ubisoft Montreal, would focus on the main game, but the other team, Ubisoft Toronto, would develop the Shang Ri segments. And keep this in mind as we go on, because it's going to be important. The lead writer, Thompson, talks about how the third game made some missteps with how it integrated side content like taking radio towers and capturing outposts when you are on a clock to save your friends, so overall a disconnect between the main story missions and the side content. But to me, that was exactly the thing that kinda made sense, and how the overall story played out as Jason is being more and more corrupted by the jungle, that he starts to forget himself and his friends, and as he is an adrenaline junkie, he's getting hooked and addicted to all of this. Much of Jason reflect the player who just wants to walk around the map doing whatever they want, instead of progressing the main story because escapism. So personally, I find this a weird analysis and statement by Thompson, especially when Far Cry 4 is not that much different in that regard, and frankly, I don't think any game with both main quests and side quests have figured out how to make a perfect balance between these two and how they fit the main narrative. One of Far Cry 4's main plot points is the civil war between Pagan Min and the Royal Army against the Golden Path, which is inspired by real-life events, particularly the civil wars in Tibet and Nepal. And Pagan, I think he's an obvious metaphor for the Chinese invasion of Tibet, and Pagan is, well, Chinese or well, Hong Kong. And he now sits on the throne of Kyrat as supreme leader, and let's just say that I don't think that Ubisoft would have created Pagan if the game was made today, because now China has a lot of investment in gaming overseas, and they currently own 10% of Ubisoft stocks, so Ubisoft does not want to lose those social credit points. The game was released in November of 2014 and received universal praise from both players and critics alike. In its first week of release, it became the fastest selling and most successful launch in the series' history. Most of the criticism was directed at its similarity to its previous installment, and to this day, the game has sold over 10 million copies. And throughout this video, we are going to see exactly why and what made this game so successful.
Ajay, my name is Sabal. I'm with the Golden Path.
Golden Path?
The opening sequence of the game is quite ingenious by Ubisoft, as the text is making us think that Lakshmana is a place and not a name. And this is reinforced when the mountains and country come into the frame, with Lakshmana lingering on the mountain, making the player believe that it's somewhere in Kerat, and probably the mountains or a lake. It's too bad for me though that the intro cinematic is bugged, because I can't hear anything for some reason. And this time around in Far Cry 4, we play as Ajay Gale, or Gale, who is of Kerati descent but has lived most of his life in America, who is coming back to Kerat due to his mother's last wish to scatter her ashes. We are immediately told what type of setting this place is, as Ajay is struggling to even get a travel ticket to Kerat, since it's such a dangerous and volatile place, as there are armed conflicts between the ruling government and rebellious Golden Path. You are smuggled into the country by a man named Darpan, who is secretly working with the Golden Path, and it's quite clear that his main mission was to take Ajay to said organization. Oh yeah, fun fact, the voice actor for Ajay is the same one who voiced Keith in Far Cry 3.
Look, just don't tell them about this, okay?
I won't.
All as fuck, man. I thought I could handle my shit. And I can't.
It's just too bad that he does not have much to say throughout the game. Ajay is traveling on a bus with Darpan when suddenly they are ambushed by the military, who are doing a routine control of the bus. They find something and suddenly the rebels on the bus starts firing and an all-out shootout starts. The rebels escape out back but are shot dead. Ajay manages to duck and roll out, and after that we meet with one, if not the best, Far Cry villain, Pagan Min.
I distinctly remember saying, stop the bus. Yes, stop the bus. Not shoot the bus. I'm very particular with my words. Stop. Shoot. Stop. Shoot.
He has such a perfect introduction where we can immediately tell his feelings on the situation, as this was not really planned and it just became a mess. Where he goes from being completely calm to suddenly going berserk on one of his senior guards, killing him with a pen for shooting at the bus knowing Ajay was in it. He has a calm exterior, but you never really know what he's going to do. And Pagan is really taking a liking to Ajay, talking to him as if he has known him his entire life, making constant physical touching. He even wants to take a selfie with him. He invites him to one of his vacation homes for a party, and Pagan also hosts a tremendous disdain for the Golden Path or even all people in Kerat. And Pagan is pretty unhinged, and we are going to tear shit up. So Ajay is hooded and we get the title screen. And I have to say, Far Cry games and title screens are always a treat. So after getting to this vacation home, Pagan introduces himself to who he is exactly.
Here we are. All right. Like this with a smile. That's you. That's me. Although I'm not so sure anymore.
And he also takes a taste of Ajay's mother's ashes. Okay. He also notices that Darpan is typing something on his phone, and apparently he has been typing with the Golden Path to come and help him. And Pagan is not that pleased with his guards for not doing routine body checks anymore. So he starts to torture Darpan because he's a bit of a sadist, stabbing him with the fork, making him scream for help and nobody will come. They later throw him to be tortured in the dungeon, but suddenly there is a situation and the villa is under attack, so Pagan tells you to sit tight while they handle the situation and just stay here and enjoy some of the crab rangoon. So, as a obedient person with no individual thoughts, and I would probably survive an authoritarian government, I sit tight for 15 minutes and Pagan comes back.
Oh, fan-bloody-tastic. You, sir, are a gentleman. I sincerely apologize. We saw terrorists in the area and yada yada. The crab rangoon, right? It's... fabulous. Well, come on, let's go.
And now the game finally starts for real. Or not. So the game was beautiful visually and the performances were great, but the game was a little bit too short for my taste, so you know, see ya next time. But yes, secret endings are fun and all, and if you just do what it literally tells you, you get rewarded for it. Nice. But this ending will come into play later on, so let's restart the game and play it the way most people played it. So, if you are a naughty boy and leave the table like an uncultured person against Uncle Pagan's wishes, you make it out of the room and meet with one of the Golden Path's leaders, namely Sabal, who knows exactly who you are, even though Ajay has never met this person before, and how he is willing to leave Darpan to his fate as Ajay is just more important. The outfits of the Golden Path are quite simplistic, with no real body armor and just common linen and bandanas bound on their arms, and you can clearly tell that these are a ragtag group of rebels who is on their last ropes. So Sabal tells Ajay to run to a nearby getaway car while the rest will cover him, and it's quite exhilarating in Far Cry games where you have to run unarmed at the intro while being sprayed with bullets and you can just hear them whooshing close to your ears. And the Golden Path even uses elephants to storm the place and break down the gates. I love elephants. You get to the car and the driver tells Ajay to take the gun from the side compartment and use it. You shoot and kill roadblocks, chasing soldiers and everything in between until you are thrown off the road after being rammed and almost die. Ajay wakes up, but the driver is dead, so he picks up the radio from the dead guy and Sabal radios in to give Ajay directions where they can meet up, which is at a nearby tall tower. Sabal does not seem to care about his own soldiers as he does not even flinch when Ajay tells him about the dead driver. The first impressions on Ajay is that he's not really that talk active, so it's hard to tell what he's thinking and what his emotions are, and there's not really much body language to indicate such. So I really wonder what Ajay's backstory is in America, where he's from, since he has all of these skills and a mentality to actually kill people and not feel remorse. Ajay immediately sets himself apart from the previous protagonist Jason from Far Cry 3, who is the complete opposite. As he talked a lot, he showed a lot of emotions, he was scared, he had never used a gun before, and he gets a panic attack when he kills someone for the first time. And I think this is a good thing that they set these two characters apart, but I just hope that they will explore Ajay a little bit more later on to explain how he can do all of these things, as Jason's introduction felt more, well, realistic, right? As it's pretty much how any normal person would react in his situation. So Pagan has also sent out scouting parties or soldiers to try and find Ajay, and they call out for Ajay and say they are not going to hurt him, they just want to take him with them. Probably by orders from Pagan. But yeah, Ajay does not seem like such a good guy as he kills the soldiers looking for him in quite a brutal fashion. And speaking of Pagan, he will start to radio in on AJ, and this will happen a lot, unfortunately, because it's some of the greatest aspects of the game. And he's not really taunting AJ, and he's never really mad at him. He truly likes AJ like a son. Although he is still a sadist and a psychopath, as he executed the chef, or was it his family? He can't really remember, because the Rangoon was seemingly not good enough to make AJ stay in the room. You could also see it as AJ's action to leave the room cost the chef his life. Even if it was an unintended casualty, it's still a consequence for AJ's actions. Pagan has killed so many people that he can't even keep track of the amount, who should be killed and how. He has become completely desensitized to killing.
Look, no hard feelings about the crab rangoon. I know it's not to everyone's taste. But you'll be pleased to know I had the chef executed for his incompetence. So wasn't his family we killed. Regardless, next time I can promise you a better spread. That's the last time I'm kidnapping a fucking TV celebrity chef.
It's also here that we learn about a new few additions to the gameplay in terms of bait and throwing knives, where you can now lure animals with the baits that you throw, and it will attract nearby carnivores, and these can decimate enemies in an instant. And the throwing knives are perfect if you lack stealth weapons, as they do a ton of damage and they are quiet. You later get a grappling hook, which is a new introduction to the franchise, where you can now find certain spots which are visually displayed at different locations around mountainside and harder to reach places. And I love this new mechanic, as the rope physics are cool. Swinging like Tarzan is always fun. You can climb, you can descend, you can jump around while climbing. It's just awesome. And it's a perfect fit for the setting, as most of it takes place in, well, mountainous terrain. And you are met with one of the warriors from the Golden Path, who is honored to meet AJ. Well, maybe not AJ, more the son of Mohan. And the landscape up here is breathtaking, and it's easily one of the most beautiful views in the franchise. There are murals on the wall depicting AJ's father, and everything we know about his father is that he's a character who is larger than life, and he's treated as a god to the Golden Path. And after climbing the tower, you meet with Sabal, who again addresses AJ as the son of Gale, who tells him how the name is a big thing around these parts. But this conversation is cut short, as you are suddenly attacked by a group of enemies who are dressed in snow camouflage and comes in on snow scooters, which shows how Pagan has the funds to hire and supply professional gear for his soldiers compared to the Golden Path army, who is just scantily clad soldiers. And after killing waves and waves of enemies, the fight is suddenly interrupted after a avalanche appears, which engulfs everyone. AJ manages to free himself, but is helped up by Sabal, who calls him brother. And the prologue is now finished. And the prologue it's great in many ways, as it's a great introduction to the gameplay, and you pretty much learn everything you need to know about the different factions, the main characters. You learn what kind of person Pagan is in only one meeting. However, I don't think it's as good as the Far Cry 3 prologue, which took things a bit more slow. It didn't even teach you how to kill enemies. It took its time setting up Jason as a character and what the main motivation of the game was, which was saving his friends and getting revenge on Vaz. But in Far Cry 4, we don't really learn anything about AJ, and we only know what the opening said, how his main goal is to deliver his mom's ashes to Lakshmana, and it's a fine character motivation, but I would have liked more focus on AJ as a character to know why this is so important for him, and how he was so skilled from the start. Sabal takes you back to the Golden Path's headquarters, where you meet the other leader of the Golden Path, namely Amita, who is probably the only person who is not impressed and not simping about how great AJ is because of him being the son of Mohan, and she thinks that Darpan should have been the priority to save instead of AJ, as he holds more value. Though I find it kinda funny how AJ says he is not involved in this conflict and only wants to take his mom's ashes to Lakshmana when he has already killed at least 10 of Pagan's soldiers, and it wasn't really in self-defense most of the time. But sure, AJ, just tell yourself it was self-defense. I don't know why Sabal reminds me of Desmond from Lost, but I think it's because he always says brother to you.
Forgive me, brother. Can I help you, brother? Brother, Desmond. These things are not in my head, brother. Hey, Doug, brother! To avoid temptation, brother. Give me whichever one has the most caffeine in it, brother.
Postscripts Victor here. I looked it up and I was pretty darn close, as Sabal is played by Naveen Andrews, who played Saeed on Lost. Small world, I guess. So, Ajay asks Sabal where Lakshmana is located in Kerat, and he's not sure but says that Lakshmana sounds like a place or a temple, but would probably be in the northern part of the country, which is currently in control of Pagan. If Sabal is even speaking the truth here, or if he says it's probably in the north because Ajay would need to join the Golden Path to reach it. But then again, Sabal does not want Ajay to risk his life, so I think he genuinely don't know where the location is. Now, Sabal and Amita will give you quests, and these will be the different main quests of the story, which will pop up from time to time. And with Amita, Ajay wants to help her, probably to show her that he can be useful, and this quest is more of an introduction quest, as you get the bow and you're to visit an outer cabin which is stalked by wolves and you need to get their pelts. And it also becomes the introduction to the crafting system, where you create new bags, wallets and holsters, just like in Far Cry 3. And after coming back, Ajay hands over the pelts and is given information regarding their religion, and how Batra, the little girl, and Amita's sister, is the Tarun Matara, who is a living goddess according to their religion and traditions. And Amita is staunchly against this tradition, as she sees it as no life for a child to be treated as an object. And it's quite obvious that this made-up religion and different traditions are based on the Dalai Lama, where one person is a collected person with spirits of all their previous Dalai Lamas, and whenever one dies, a new one will be reborn that the monks will go and look for. So it's pretty much the same here, though the difference is, unless I'm mistaken, that the Dalai Lama is always a boy, while the Tarun Matara is always a girl, since it's a reincarnation of the goddess of Kira. And also, as Ajay's mother was the previous Tarun Matara. And don't worry, this information about his mother does not really affect anything, yet at least. And next up is Sabal's quests, where you enter the building and he's treating someone injured who has taken a lot of injuries due to a fall, as Sabal had told him to climb the nearby radio towers which are spewing Pagan's propaganda. And this is a change I actually love, whereas in 3 they were only used to block the signals from the Rakyat warriors, but in 4 they are actually important to capture and narratively interesting, as they are propaganda pieces that flood the radios with, well, propaganda. And Ajay offers his services and Sabal makes you promise not to fall, and the quest's name is aptly named Propaganda Machine. The radio towers are always enjoyable, as they are like these puzzles where you need to find the correct path, and this time around they are quite different from the metallic ones from 3, where now they are wooden buildings that needs to be climbed. And this time around, when you capture the towers, you get the classic show 3 locations, but they also show up on a map, whereas in 3 they never showed up on a map, which was annoying to say the least. I also love that in 4 you have this propaganda voice on the radio that's spewing out, and the interesting part is how they change the propaganda depending on where you are in the main story, where they start fairly innocent, but towards the end it's penalty of death. And after succeeding with the mission, Sabal calls you to give you the directions to a weapons smuggler who is supplying the Golden Path with weapons, but they need more of them and more advanced weapons. The man's name is Longinus. And he's pretty crazy. He has a whole stash of weapons and he calls his tent a church. So a church where he sells weapons. The interesting part about him is that he quotes and twists the Bible to suit his weapon craziness. Hell, he even ponders the question of what weapon Jesus would have used and quotes different gun numbers from passages and the Bible.
When the Son of God is reborn, what gun would he use? When Christ returns to break the 7 seals and bring about the rapture, he returns as a lion, yes? A lion needs teeth. What gun would Jesus choose? Deuteronomy 32:47? For there are no empty words for you, but your very life. Or maybe Revelations 19:11. The discretion of a man deferreth his anger.
When we all know that Jesus would have used a shuriken. He sees guns as a necessity to do good things, and I think this man would be loved in America. And it's as if he is trying to redeem himself and justifying his cause by selling guns, which does take countless of lives, but yeah, it seems that he is trying to redeem himself for something he has done in his previous life. You are interrupted when Sabal messages on the radio that the Golden Path's main camp is under attack. Sabal tells AJ to stay far away as he wants him to be protected. It's interesting how Sabal is showing so much concern for AJ, and initially he never tells AJ to take any risks. It's AJ who willingly goes out of his way to help him. So you're on a timer to get back to the city, 6 minutes to be exact, which is way too long since it's not a long distance away. Pagan calls you on the radio and starts to reminisce about AJ's mother and him when AJ was on her hip, and how she was so happy during those days. Even Pagan was happy and they had plans for Kirat, and how the current Kirat was not always like this, and how Pagan misses those days. But now it's too late to change it. Pagan tried, but this place is just ruinous. He ends with a warning to AJ to not let Sabal and Amita and the whole Golden Path drag AJ down, as Ishwari, AJ's mother, did not send him back to Kirat for that purpose. And he's right. Her last wish was to spread her ashes next to Lakshmana, not fight a civil war, and that's exactly why they escaped to America in the first place. You reach the village and ask Sabal what you can do, and it's quite contradicting of what the mission is saying and what Sabal is saying, as he curses that AJ came here at all, and he just tells AJ to help what people he can and keep his head down, and that he and his soldiers will be there soon, while on the other hand the mission objective from the start is to clear the village of army soldiers, and I'm not sure if the objective is a reflection of AJ's mind or not, because it's not Sabal's intent for AJ. And this quest, it's pretty standard, where you fight off incoming waves of enemies from different directions, but they do set fire to one of the buildings which has Badra in it whom you need to save, and AJ quite heroically enters the burning building and lifts her unconscious body and throws himself out of the building, saving her life. Sabal is completely dismissive about Badra's feelings, as he wants to immediately after you saved her life and her waking up is to show her in front of the people to encourage them to show that she is unharmed, because, you know, she is their goddess. Amita bursts out that she is just a child and how she is terrified. She gets it her way and Badra thanks AJ for saving her life. Amita is angry and blames AJ for what just happened, as the hit on Paul's house to save AJ probably caused this attack on the village as revenge. Sabal takes the blame and defends AJ. He says that the army took one of the villages and now have hostages, where Amita says that the hostages are not important because taking back the outpost should be the priority now that they are cut off from supplies. Sabal drags you to the side and tells you to save the hostages before you take back the outpost, contrary to what Amita said. And Sabal truly cares about the people, or at least the civilians, as he argues why the hostages are more important. And if the Golden Path cannot protect the people of Kerat, why would they trust them or join them? So again, he is kinda right here. And this is a new type of mission where you have to save at least 2 of the hostages, and if you are detected, the enemies will start killing the hostages. And this mission type was used in Blood Dragon, but there it was only 1 hostage in total to be saved, where here it can be more than 4. And these are basically smaller outpost missions. It's just that you need to stay stealthy and you can't go in guns blazing, well, unless you have great aim. And after saving the hostages, Sabal praises AJ, but it feels like he's starting to manipulate AJ as he keeps on comparing him to his father and how he would have been proud of his actions. AJ is still quite reluctant as he's not here for this, he just wants to spread his mother's ashes. But Sabal keeps on saying how AJ's action has done something here, he has saved lives, he has made a change. And even though Sabal does not know exactly where Lakshmana lies or what it is, he tells AJ that helping the Golden Path will help him reach Lakshmana. I think he has started to understand that he can use this as leverage and motivation for AJ to join them, and how they will find it together. Immediately afterwards, Amita calls you and she is not happy, and she blames you for rescuing the hostages because now she has to put her soldiers, who was supposed to take back the outpost, and they now need to defend the hostages. She knows that Sabal put him up to this, and she insists that Jason needs to start to see the bigger picture of the conflict, and this is a trait that personifies Amita. The end justifies the means, and how she is willing to sacrifice anything to win the war. AJ offers himself up to liberate the outpost on his own, which seems impossible according to Amita, and how he should wait for proper reinforcements, but AJ cannot be dismayed. And I can see why, because this is the easiest outpost in the history of Far Cry, because all you have to do is shoot the lock on the elephant cage and it will solo the whole camp with ease. I love elephants. Well, while we are on the outposts, let's talk a little bit more about them. There has been a few changes compared to its predecessor, and the biggest change is probably the layout of the outposts, as they host a lot more houses and obstacles, which makes it harder for you to scout them out from afar. And all in all, they are just as fun as in Far Cry 3. Another change is when you liberate an outpost, and let's say you only have 1 enemy left and he spots you before you kill him, and you lose out on this bonus experience because you didn't liberate the outpost undetected, half of the XP gained. But now you can replay the outpost and you can now redo the outpost and you can now get the undetected. And you can now finish the outpost undetected, which grants you the full experience. And this is a great change because in Far Cry 3 you can only reset every outpost, not just a single one. And there are a ton of these outposts in the game, and as always you can see them from the black smoke, which makes it easier to spot where they are, and again they are one of the funniest and most interesting aspects of the game. So after liberating the first outpost, Amita scolds AJ as he has now disobeyed her orders twice now with the hostages and the outpost, but for the first time now, Amita is actually praising AJ for his great work. And an interesting point here is that Amita tells him that his mother would have been proud of him, and how she would have done the same thing as AJ just did. It's a really interesting dynamic between Amita and Sabal, because Sabal is always comparing him to his father, and Amita compares him to his mother. But it kinda makes sense because Sabal idolizes Mohan, which includes the same traditions, the religion and what he wanted, as it's revealed in one of Mohan's journals, which you can find scattered throughout the world. And it's also revealed that he married Ishwari and how she was the Tarut Matara, when she was only a child, I think 14 years old, and how Mohan and Ishwari started the Golden Path together. And while Mohan gets all the praise, she was still one of the funders, and as Amita is one of the first female Golden Path soldiers, she looks up to Ajay's mother. And I'm not sure if Amita is lying to Ajay here regarding reaching Lakshmana, as she also, like Sabal, says it's located in the north and how it's under Pagan's territory. She does not know what it is, but guesses it's a location. She does not know exactly if it's in the north, but she wants to motivate Ajay to join them as she has now seen the potential he inhabits. And the fact that she wants Ajay to start to support her as the leader of the Golden Path over Sabal. And this is the end of Act 1, and it's a good introduction and setup for the game. But it's also now that the world truly opens up for you, where you can do anything you want. And when you play a Far Cry game, side content is bound to be there, and plenty of it. And praise the Lord, because the bulletin board is removed, and instead many new side activities have been added, and they actually have stories and cutscenes in them. Some of these quests have certain requirements before Ajay is contacted by them. For example, after burning up a few propaganda posters, you are contacted by one of the native radio jockeys, namely Rabbi Ray Rana, who is the host of Radio Free Kerat, and you will start to gain propaganda quests as he wants change in the country. He is clearly Americanized in his mannerism. He will spread the message of liberation, while Ajay will be more boots on the ground and destroying Pagan's propaganda machines. I still wonder what's in that box though. So yeah, these quests are more or less just destroying propaganda centers where you need to destroy a certain amount of computers, recording machines and electronics, where more enemies will come with the more stuff you break. Unfortunately for me, I managed to break down pretty much everything in fast succession, which made all the different waves of enemies come at the same time, which got really intense and fast. Also, he pronounces Pagan really weird for some reason.
Besides, the more people I turn away from Pagan, the less people you have to fight.
There is also Chiffon, who was Pagan's previous disciple, who sends you on a mission to kill and skin rare animals for Kerat Fashion Week. And you can use the hide to craft legendary wallets, bags, etc., just like in Far Cry 3. But after doing all of them for Chiffon, I walked back to his cabin, and guess what? There is not a single cutscenes. There is only a letter saying he moved away. How can that be it? I just wonder why not every single side mission had an ending cutscene, because when we meet them, they are there. And it's especially disrespectful because I probably did over 8 quests for Chiffon with all the skins, and this is what I get. There is also the karma meter, which is a new addition, where you gain karma by doing good things, like saving hostages, helping out Golden Path members when they are attacked by enemy soldiers, or helping civilians when they are attacked by wild beasts. And these are the so-called karma events, which randomly pop up on the map. But you also lose karma points if you do bad stuff like killing civilians or allies. Each level rewards you with different things, be it weapons, tokens that you can use to summon Golden Path members to aid you, more experience gained, and having to pay less in stores, and lastly getting a signature weapon, which is quite handy. In Act 2, the game introduces a new mechanic that no other Far Cry game will use, the so-called balance of power missions, and it gives the player multiple choices as to how to proceed with the story. You see, throughout the game, there will be certain Golden Path main missions that will have Sabal and Amita argue about what action should be taken when both of their choices are at a standstill. The choices you make will create some variance in terms of dialogue, allegiances up until the last choice, which creates more replayability with the game. And it's a really cool system which lets you choose between who makes the most sense between Amita and Sabal. And personally, I decided to side with Sabal most of the time, but more about that later. In this particular argument, Amita wants some of the intel which can reveal what Pagan plans to do next, but Sabal wants to save the soldiers who gather this intel and who are under attack, as they are being hunted down. As mentioned earlier, you can clearly see now how their ideologies differ, where Sabal cares more about the people, but he does not think in the grander scheme of things, like Amita, who is willing to make sacrifices to win the war.
This is about lives. If we don't act, people will die.
This is about war. We need that intel.
We're talking about soldiers we can use. Remember what you said about DARPA?
And if I had a choice between DARPA and the intelligence, I choose the intel.
And it's a great introduction to this system, as this is not really a major choice that will have huge implications, but it is a moral choice regarding if the end justify the means and if the intel is worth more than just a couple of human lives. So during these standstills, you can talk to both Sabal and Amita, hearing out their respective proposals and then decide which one you agree to support. But I think they did not nail this, because whenever AJ hears their proposals, they look like this.
Amita, I can get you that intel. How can I help? I'll do it. I think you're right about this. I'm in.
And this is before you actually confirm that you will agree and go with their proposals, because every single time AJ starts with "I'm in," instead of asking what their plan is before saying yes to it, it just feels weird when AJ says "I'm in" to both Amita and Sabal every time when you're just listening to their proposals instead of after making the choice. And in this particular quest, I chose to help Amita because I think that the information could be more vital and potentially save more lives in the long run. So you get to the location where the allied soldiers' last position was mentioned, but all the allied soldiers are dead and you are introduced to a new enemy called the Hunters, and these are silent assassins as they use bows, and you can only see them for a short time with a camera marking them on the map, but after a short while they will go stealth again and your mark will go away. They can also charm or tame animals, so never use bait or animal cages against these guys. And I think these are a great addition as they spice up the gameplay, where you now need to always keep track on where they are quiet all the time, and they will try and flank you. So after running between different camps and searching dead bodies for the intel and killing a ton of hunters, you manage to find the correct intel, which will come into play later. And with this, Amita is the one who leads the golden path for now. And yeah, whoever you side with leads the golden path until the next choice. And after siding with whichever person, you will be reprimanded by the other one for not siding with them. For example, with Intel and Sabal, who is really mad at AJ, but mostly at Amita. However, this is a great dialogue when Sabal actually confronts AJ for the first time, as the answer should have been obvious because AJ is Mohan's son and he would have backed Sabal. And he sees AJ as Mohan, and this feels like, well, a betrayal for Sabal.
9 of my men are dead. Good men you let die.
You guys put me in a difficult position.
The right choice was obvious! It's what your father would have done. That's the golden path. That's the direction we were going before he died and it all went to shit. Amita doesn't get it. She's always put her goals first. She's underhanded, she's subversive, and she always sacrifices lives. That's why I stepped up. I stepped up because I knew your father, and I respected his vision.
And this is a comparison scene if you side with Sabal on the same quests.
A champion returns. Defending that rebel camp saved a lot of lives.
You guys put me in a difficult position.
Amita would have let our people die, and for what? For intel that we may or may not have needed? The right choice was obvious, brother. It's what your father would have done.
Unfortunately, Pagan keeps on checking in with AJ, and it's as if he knows exactly what AJ is thinking and what he's doing, as he starts to ask which Golden Path member AJ is rooting for. And I think for many people who play Far Cry 4 for the first time, they might be making their choice based on the looks of the characters. And Pagan is not really into Sabal, even though he might look like it with his mannerisms and apparel, as he is batting for the other team and there is only one woman he ever loved, which was Ajay's mother. That's kinda cute, Pagan. Kyrat is probably the most beautiful world that Ubisoft has created, with its vibrant colors mixing the people's traditions with the statues, the flags, the temples and the mountainous terrain, combined with a natural formation of the Himalayan mountains creates a spectacle to behold. And this map feels huge, and it actually has different weather, where in the south it's sunny and dry, while in the north it starts to snow and snow further up. They truly set out to nail that Nepal setting, which most of the game was based on, and they did a great job recreating it. I also find it interesting how every time you're introduced to a new area, besides the name, the height above ground is always mentioned, and you truly feel far from home and how small and insignificant you are in the world, especially when you are up in the Himalayas. And if you can say one thing about Far Cry 4's visuals, it's the colors. These are some of the most beautiful colors that just comes together, and it's mostly the powder and the colors of orange, blue and pink and how they mesh together in such a great way. The murals on the walls depicting various characters, the bells, the wheels that can be used, and just a ton of different and beautiful flowers and petals in the water. The game excels later on in the arena, where they have this mishmash of colors which is such eye candy. And it's kinda ironic how this is such a beautiful country. It looks so peaceful, but underneath all of this beauty there is murder, kidnappings, child slavery and everything bad you can imagine happening every single day. Hell, the situation is so unstable that tourists are not even allowed here. And how one such beautiful country is plagued by war is a tragedy, to be sure. You can also observe the beauty from the sky, as for the first time we get to drive a helicopter, which I love. They are extremely effective in the mountainous terrain of Kyrat, but they will also start to beep if your altitude becomes too high, and you can only use your sidearms and throwables while on it. There are also these small freewheel cars which are blasting Indian music, and I can't say I drove these a lot, as I prefer to run or fly. And with flying I mean the wingsuit, because remember in Far Cry 3 when the wingsuit was unlocked and introduced, it was in the last third of the game when you reach the southern island. But in Far Cry 4 you can immediately unlock it whenever you want, and it's not just a perk, you can just buy it for a small sum at any store. One big downgrade from the previous game is the new skill system. Gone are the 3 different schools, and instead they are replaced by the school of the tiger and the elephant, symbolizing Sabal and Amita's differences. Why could they not have done something like Amita, who is always wearing orange, is with the tiger faction, and Sabal, who is wearing the blue, is the elephant faction, and how both of these factions are competing within the Golden Path? And actually have these two be major ideologies within the Golden Path, seeing as how the game is semi-mystical or magical with the Shang Ri scrolls later on, and how you are drugged. Why not add some elements to this? How Ajay maybe finds the origin of these two factions and how they were created, and how it's maybe some mystical shit in it. I don't know, it's just hard to say, because I truly loved the Tatao skill tree in Far Cry 3, because it managed to tie in the story and the narrative. How every kill Jason makes, the stronger he becomes, and the stronger he becomes, the bigger the Tatao gets, and it's one of the best skill trees I have ever seen in gaming. Not what's in it, of course, the skills are quite generic, but it's just the inclusion of skill tree with the narrative and story which makes it so great. And here, it's just there for no rhyme or reason. Again, they take stuff from Far Cry 3, but they don't understand exactly what made it so great in the first place. But hey, at least you can ride elephants. I love elephants. And speaking of elephants, many new animals and wildlife has been introduced, such as the rhino and elephants. who will fuck you up because they will take a ton of ammo to kill, especially if you are trying to kill them with a bow to get that extra skin. And yeah, in 4, you get double skins if you kill your target or animal with a bow, compared to Far Cry 3, where if you killed any animal with any weapon, you would get the same amount of skins. And I like this change, because the game actually rewards you for going, well, back to the roots of hunting, and you are rewarded for doing something in a more difficult manner, without it feeling forced. And speaking of going back to the traditions, Sabal wants Ajay to go to the temple to learn more about his father and the country's religion and traditions. So you pick up a offering basket and go around the different altars and bonfires where you listen to the meaning by the guru, while respecting the traditions. However, this moment is cut short when Amita calls and tells Ajay that the intel he recovered revealed a plan to attack the monastery where Ajay is at the moment. So you get a timer until the enemy arrives, which lets you set up a defense perimeter. And the C4 explosives are perfect here since the enemies can only come in 2 different directions, and you have a MG nest to defend the entrance. And in this section, the enemies will try to blow up 3 different locations where you need to stop them from planting the bombs, which forces you to move around the area, which is a great mission structure where many other games would just have waves upon waves of enemies come towards you. And sometimes it does get a little bit panicky when they start to plant bombs at several locations at the same time. But the interesting part is, what would have happened if you would have sided with Sabal in the first mission? Because this is the mission that shows how your choices creates differences and consequences. As if you would have sided with Sabal, you would have had no time to prepare for the upcoming attack because you did not get the intel and plans regarding the attack by the Deplore. And these small differences make a great change to the gameplay, and it feels like your choices kinda matters. And yeah, so throughout this game, you will also start to gain other quests besides the Golden Path. Amita and Sabal, Longinus, Willis, yeah, he makes a comeback, Yogi and Reggie, and others. And most of these are optional, but some are required to continue the main story, but you will not know which ones. And what makes it hard is to analyze this game in a straightforward manner, so whenever a character is introduced, I will focus on that character and all their missions, because most of the missions is pretty much just doing the same thing, so we're just gonna get that over with. Because it's better than jumping between missions, which would just be confusing to say the least. So after saving the monastery, Longinus have some missions for you, and I just love him. He has some of the best lines in the game.
As soldiers, we protect our people through our willingness to kill. And what do we need to fulfill our purpose?
Faith?
Guns, AJ! Guns! Without them, how else will we pass through the sea of trouble and calm the surging tides?
And he wants you to collect a shipment up in the mountains where a helicopter has crashed. You get a radar to track down the shipment, and this is the first time you will visit the Himalayas, and it's okay. I don't know, I expected more. You know how everyone who talks about it says it's amazing and it hosts such beauty? Yeah, I didn't really get all that here at all, and I'm not sure if it's the setting for this specific mission, as you follow the radar to the nearest camp, though I like the realism of having to use air canisters to breathe up in the mountains, and you can either collect these from the camps or from the corpses of your enemies. All the enemies are wearing snow camouflage and ride scooters, and you eventually find a lockbox which does not look that essential, but after bringing it back to Longinus, he reveals what's inside: blood diamonds. And in a previous life, he was a warlord who changed after having a bullet shot in his head, and he changed his ways to the way of the Lord. Although I'm not sure God would like what he's doing. And yeah, he mentions the Goka Falls, which is a location where we kill a certain warlord in Far Cry 2, and the question whether or not these two are the same person is only a theory. But I think that the slow of evidence with all the diamonds which we collect in Far Cry 2, hell, it's the currency there, the same location where we shoot and kill many people, and how he seemingly survived a gunshot to the head. I personally believe that it's the same person. Longinus explains that all of these diamonds are his sins, and he has committed so many of them throughout his previous life. He will provide a golden path with more weapons, and he even tells AJ that the Deplore is preparing a large shipment of opium at the old tea factory, which could be used by the golden path.
Wait, opium?
Another terrible business, AJ. Now go and tell them, and when you are finished, come see me, for the Lord's work is never done.
While Amita and Sabal prepares the next move, you actually meet up with one of the most underutilized characters in this game, Badra. I understand that the devs wanted her to be a passive non-player who is just a piece on the board and not a person, which makes it even more tragic of her fate regardless of the ending. And this also gives the player choice more agency, since it will be between Sabal and Amita, but she does have one quest where we meet her at a local burial where she reveals some interesting things about AJ's father, how he did not just die. He was murdered in his own home, so that's where we are heading next. Unfortunately, the area is controlled by Noore. It's too bad we can't have more Badra screen time to actually bond with her and feel more sympathy for her, as she is the goddess or just a political piece. I would like to know exactly what she wants to do, how she feels, and who she would side with if she would decide. Well, now for the worst part of the game. Yogi and Reggie. Ugh, I just cannot stand these characters for good reasons. They are just plain annoying, and I get that's the point, and the game does a critique of the ignorant westerner who says they have so much respect of different cultures, the spiritualism, but they are just there to get high and have fun, and how they act is if they have any knowledge or wisdom whatsoever, and they even want payment for vague tips from AJ.
Oh, our friend, Om Shiva, comes from afar, seeking answers. We can give him those answers.
For a nominal fee.
Right? Nothing in life is free.
This is actually the most emotional moment for AJ thus far, as he confronts them, since they are literally getting high in his house and the whole place looks like a pigsty. They try to defuse the situation by obviously lying their asses off with mumbo-jumbo spiritual advisors, and they try to scam AJ. But then Reggie actually starts to read AJ for real and sees a world of danger. So yeah, that's weird. They drug AJ with some sort of injection. Oh, and don't worry, because this is going to happen again, a lot of times. And no, it's not as good as in Far Cry 3. AJ is dragged off into an arena which is under control by Noore, who is working for Pagan, and she is playing the role of the hype man to rile the crowd, and how she will promise them action, blood, and everything else, and how she addresses AJ as the son of a terrorist, how he abandoned the country and now comes back in chains to answer for his crimes, or rather, his family's crimes. But it seems that Noore is just playing an act, as she thinks AJ can make a difference here, and she planted a knife in the sand to give AJ a better chance to live, because he is stripped of all his weapons and clothes, and his life is now tied to hers. And the arena is pure chaos on every level, where enemies from 4 different teams will fight each other, and especially you. There are also a wide array of wild animals that will be thrown into the ring, and even rhinos later on in some stages. And this is more or less the introduction to the arena mechanics, so you start with no weapons, except for the knife, and you need to kill enemies to pick up their weapons, and this creates more action and suspense, as you don't have your personal arsenal with you, and this is simply using what you have learned in the game so far, like using your innate abilities and some luck. After surviving, you are brought to Noore, where she actually explains why she helped AJ, and well, why she acts like she does. Paul Deplore has her family and she would do anything Pagan wants her to do. The Golden Path wants Paul dead, and she wants her family so you can help each other out. She will help AJ capture Paul, and she also wants you to take it easy on Yogi and Reggie as they are also being played. I never really understood this, as I never felt that they were under any contract or binds which forced them to drag people and drag them to the arena, especially after you consider the fact that I'm not sure if they dragged AJ because they found out who he was in Reggie's vision, or if they just drag anyone coming there, sells them to Noore, as they can use them in the arena as fodder. Anywho, after this mission, the arena is unlocked for you to play in 3 different modes, where the standard mode is you fight 3 or 4 waves of enemies, which gets gradually more difficult, with one last round being a boss round with more heavies. And between rounds, the crowd will throw you down health packs or ammo if you perform well. The second mode is the endless wave mode, where, well, waves of enemies will come at you forever and they will be harder and harder with each wave. And then there is the weapon arena, where you can pretty much choose any gun that you own and use in the arena, and that will be the only weapon you can use for the whole match. And depending on your skills with it, you will get stars to measure your proficiency with the weapon. The arena itself is enjoyable, as it's tight, there are not many places to hide, and you can actually use the enemies against each other and then go around and stab them in the back while they are busy with each other. But the greatest feeling and one of the most visually beautiful aspects is whenever you win in the arena, they will throw down this blue and orange smoke paint that is just scattered everywhere while AJ is just throwing up his hands, celebrating. I love it. You also get points in all of these 3 modes where you level up, and with these levels you can unlock certain weapons, which is every other level, but the thing you want the most is on level 10, because it unlocks the Bushman signature weapon. And this is probably the best rifle in the game, as it has silencer, it does a lot of damage, and it has a huge magazine. Unfortunately, I must have played 15 to 20 of these matches and I was nowhere close to level 10 because the amount of experience you gain is just too low and it goes too slow to get it, especially when most people only play to get rank 10 to unlock the Bushman. However, I do find it interesting that the arena would never make a comeback in any future Far Cry games, because I found it an interesting side activity. They only had to change some stuff, like maybe adding more arenas or rooms and better rewards for the players, and trying to find that sweet spot with the experience and getting the weapons, because right now it takes way too long. Pagan gives us another call and starts to brag about all the riches of Kirat, which are in his vaults. He has an interesting mindset as he does not see it as stolen, as the Golden Path robbed themselves for centuries instead of putting this to good use. While Pagan has been selling it off to the west and melting down the rest to make stuff. And while it is true that artifacts, metals and valuable stones serve no real purpose in terms of financial value as they are, however, the people's history and traditions, which makes many of them invaluable. And Pagan is able to sell all of this stuff because, well, he hates the traditions and the religions here, and he has managed to sell them as he is an outsider who only came to power because he took advantage of the previous civil war. And I guess if the Golden Path was serious about winning the war, they would sell everything they could to buy more equipment to win the actual war. So now that we have met 2 of Pagan's lieutenants, the Plur and Noore, who control the southern part of the map, we should probably talk about one of the best new features to the game, which are the fortresses. And these are pretty much just like outposts, but 10 times harder with a ton of more enemies inside, and if the reinforcements come, pray to God, because they will come down at you from everywhere. And this offers a great challenge to even the most veteran of Far Cry players, and I love it. You can take these on at any time in the story, but all the gates will be closed and have more men guarding them. But at certain story segments, they will weaken after you dispatch each fortress with its owner. So for example, let's say you wanna take down Noore's fortress. It's harder to start, but if you defeat Noore, then the fortress will be easier to take because the doors will be open to it and there will be less soldiers in there. Personally, I did it in the opposite order and I took them over when they were at their hardest because I want a challenge, right? But I do love the fact that the game is giving the players the choice as to how they wanna tackle these. And in some cases, you can't get into them unless you fly in or break down the front gate with an elephant or explosives. And when I say these are insanely difficult when they are not weakened, I mean it. Because I think I spent 25 minutes on taking down Pagan's fortress because the reinforcements just kept coming with a ton of helicopters and the fact that every single enemy has pinpoint accuracy. But I still loved it. And just like in Far Cry 3, the enemies are pretty much the same with only one new addition, which I mentioned earlier, the Hunters. So remember when you had the idle talk of the pirates who pretty much always talks about STDs? Yeah, this idle talk is kinda gone because there is not a single memorable line from the enemies at all, which is a huge shame. Because it could have been cool to hear the NPCs talk about the current situation, as just like in the radio towers changing its message depending on how far you're into the story, the enemies can maybe talk about AJ, maybe he gets a nickname like the Butcher, and how he's able to take down camps on his own. Or maybe have them talk about how Pagan says everything is going to be alright, and maybe some people are doubtful and are starting to panic. I don't know, it would have added so much more and fleshed out the enemies, and of course the immersion. The weapons and the shops are pretty much the same, but there are a few new weapons that has been added to the mix. The game has also stuck with all the different modifications you can do to your weapons, like extended mags, silencers and more. I said that the Ripper was the best weapon in Far Cry 3 because it had a huge mag, did awesome damage and it could shoot through most of the walls and covers, so yeah, it was OP. And I finally got it in Far Cry 4, and the requirement is taking down 4 fortresses, so yeah, you get it super late into the game. And then I tried the buzzsaw, or the MG42, and it outclassed the Ripper in every single way, and it almost made the game too easy. The issue that I found is that it was unlocked through story missions. A later one, sure, but why is the Ripper locked behind some of the content you will do last, taking over the 4 fortresses, and it's worse than a story mission weapon? Why? Just a really weird choice. They should have swapped these two if anything. What a waste of time. I mean, just look at the MG here. Yeah, it's pretty damn OP. So what's really weird is how low the recoil is in Far Cry 3 and 4, like emptying a mag with a buzzsaw there is barely any recoil at all, but in newer Far Cry games the recoil is too much, which makes a lot of weapons just straight up awful, and there has to be a middle ground because it's too little back then and it's too much in modern Far Cry games. But enough about weapons, let's talk about drugs. And by drugs, I mean getting some sweet revenge on the druggies Yogi and Reggie for drugging you and selling you off to die. And this is the most emotional we will ever see AJ, as he pulls a gun on them and threatens to kill them if they don't leave the house.
Still alive, bags! Hang on, my friend! I know you're angry with Donald for what he did, but we're him, buddy!
He means trouble, and it's Yogi yet.
Shoot you both.
Listen, I don't blame you for wanting to put a hole in Reggie here.
Look, we're trapped in this bloody country, like you, or I think nicked our passports, and they're getting us to fuck over folks like you.
However, they don't care at all since they barely react to the situation, and for some reason AJ calms down and asks about the painting on the wall, and this is the introduction to some of the greatest content Far Cry 4 has to offer. So they give you a map to a nearby cave which holds one of these scrolls, and the first is a beautiful painting of a white tiger in a burning background clearly being attacked. and AJ falls into some form of trance where he is transferred to the world of the painting. Not like Dark Souls, but it's great. And I'm not sure if it's because of his blood or if he has just found it. Well, I guess we should talk about what I think is one of the best parts of Far Cry 4, which is the Shang Ri segments, where you are transferred to a mountainous snow terrain and we actually have a narrator called Kalinag, or rather we play as him, as he discovers this new world and land and he has to do a leap of faith. And the visuals here are breathtaking, with vibrant colors, the fish circling around you, and leaves are falling or rather floating in a timeless warp with a ton of orange colors mimicking fall. Fall also means in a way death and rebirth of plants as they are shedding their leaves for the next generation, but it tells you that change is happening. And we find out that the person we are playing are on orders from the Karate King to find the paradise called Shang Ri, which seems to be the only way to witness paradise in some way. We find a wounded white tiger where we try to attend its wounds. And yeah, we get a knife and a partner for life. The tiger had defended its home, but from what? And you meet these demons in blue rags and golden masks and they have no real face. And the demons have supposedly invaded Shangri-La and they want it for something we don't quite know yet. But out of nowhere, the white tiger has returned from the dead. Not to save us, but to gain revenge. But you both have the same goals, so this will be your main partner throughout these segments. And let's talk a little bit more about the tiger and the development around Shangri-La. So Ubisoft put another company on making the Shangri-La segments of Far Cry 4, so the tone and everything feels so different compared to the base game of Far Cry 4. But this was also the studio that would create the future game Far Cry Primal, and you can clearly see how this place was the precursor for that game, because this is the first time we can actually control animals to do our bidding, like ordering them to kill enemies, how they can go stealth, etc. and how there are no modern weapons here, only arrows and knives. This world was clearly a trial for creating Primal as the next Far Cry installment, and it even shares some of the visual aspects, especially the first painting with its orange filter and leaves flying all around it, just as in Primal. So you and the white tiger will fight these demons where you can either take them down stealthily or you can order your tiger to take them down. And of course, if everything goes to shit, you just have to go stabby stabby. The goal of these is to find the different praying wheels, which are gigantic compared to the base game, and turn them, which opens up new paths and turn the giant statues. The main goal is to free the chained bells, which seems to remove the corruption and demonic presence from the land. The further in you get, the more varied the demons also become, as they introduce the Flamer guys, who will also be in Far Cry Primal, as when dealing with fire heavies you can order the tiger to hold them down while you do a takedown on them. So after reaching the giant bell, you cut it loose and it emits a sound wave which cleanses the area of demons. And that's it for the first mission, a great introduction to the new world of Shangri-La. So AJ wakes up back in the house, and according to Reggie and Yogi, he stumbled back home and put the painting into the frame and started sleeping, so it's as if AJ is unconscious during these segments. And Yogi and Reggie finally decides to leave, 20 meters away. And there are 5 of these Shangri-La paintings in total, and 2 of them are locked behind the main story in terms of being in the north region, which you can't access before you progress the main story. The second painting that you find is about the demons, where Kalinag now enters the realm to hunt for the mysterious demon Rakshasa that controls all of Shangri-La, and there are many others like you who have traveled to find Shangri-La by the orders of the king, but everyone else has failed. and we get probably one of my favorite visual shots in this game when we find the bow. And here you can see water dripping from the floor up to the roof, and the most gorgeous shot of a previous warrior who has failed while he is suspended in the air with the goddess of Kira looking down on him and a ray of light hitting him and the butterflies flooding around him. It's an amazing scene that I could not take my eyes off, and I believe that the Dao that flies off when Kalina grabs the bow is the warrior's soul finally being freed. So this bow is actually really cool, and probably the most unique weapon in the Far Cry franchise, as when you hold down and aim with it, it will slow down time, and you have 5 of these bars that drain during this time, and it will refresh during downtime, and it's a really cool mechanic that lets you lay out your shots. And this is great, especially since they introduced demon archers. But yeah, just like the previous painting, it's pretty much the same. Spin the wheels, ring the bell of enlightenment, but this time when it rings, you see some kind of monstrous bird coming towards you, which is pushed away by the bell at the last second. And as usual, you wake up in the homestead. The third painting is of the Tarun Matara, where you are getting closer to the plague which is controlling the land, and how Kalinag is starting to lose his memory of his previous life before he found Shang Ri. And in this mission, you actually get to fly, as you step and jump on these different wind spires to gain momentum to fly. And this section is fairly difficult, as you need to find the best path to your location. You find another man who is a previous seeker and grab something from his bow, and you add it to your bow string, which lets you fire 5 arrows at the same time. Where one light tap is a widespread shot, and holding it will be all 5 arrows going on the same place. And I absolutely love this mechanic, as it makes it much easier to take down the heavy enemies, and you are starting to truly feel like a god now. A new enemy type, which are the dogs, which will explode when you kill them, and you can use them to your advantage to kill off groups of enemies. After flying some more, which get more difficult each time, where I even got stuck towards the end because you have to fly perfectly without losing momentum, you ring the bell and you can see the monstrous bird more clearly this time before he is forced to retreat due to the bell. And the fourth painting is of a great elephant, where you and the white tiger continue to travel towards Rakshasa. But the closer you get to him, the darker and more twisted the world becomes, and it's no longer this beautiful Shangri-La we first discovered, as everything is covered in darkness and the nature itself has started to wither away, animals being on fire throwing themselves off cliffs, and you hear an elephant off in the distance and you rush to see what's going on, and the elephant is cornered by a ton of demons which you dispatch, and you later tame the elephant and it transforms into this battle elephant with armor which you can now use, and it's just like any other elephant in the game except it's much stronger and no enemies are matched for it. And while you are on top you can fire your arrows and you are unstoppable until you have to pass a bridge which is filled with numerous demons who use fire arrows to attack you. You breach the gate and make it into the inner courtyard, and yeah, at this point it gets much harder, as each section has a ton of enemies spawning and archers which shoots arrows that temporarily drug you. The bell is once again freed, as the Rakshasa is so close in getting you until it's repelled by the bell. But it seems that the bells are not enough to kill it. You have to do it personally, and we get a cliffhanger with Kalinag flying after the bird to kill it once and for all. So, the fifth and last painting is of the monstrous bird, Rakshasa. And we begin when we left off, flying after it, and I love the aesthetic of the bird as it's covered in metal and jewelry, and it's like a golden but evil phoenix. And it will fly around the arena and spawn enemies, and you need to aim at its mouth when it's trying to attack and shoot fireballs at you. You do this 3 times and it will go down on the ground, where you need to order the tiger to expose its mouth where you shoot directly into it. And with each time you do it, more of its armor is shinked off, and it's like its inner molten core is trying to escape its body. You do this 3 more times, and on the 3rd time the tiger jumps into its mouth, and it's almost as if it's cleansed from the inside. side. The last bell is freed and it removes all of the darkness, and Shangri-La is now free again. And how Kalanag give this explanation to a painter. And yeah, all of these paintings you have been collecting and gathering, they were made on Kalanag's instruction. And this is a really cool thing, and it makes you feel that it's a perfect blend between mythology and reality. And it's actually hard to believe that the Shangri-La sections is in the same game as the rest of Far Cry 4, because it's such a different game in every manner. And I believe they 100% succeeded in tying in the karate tradition to the different demons, goddesses and history into these sections. Of course there are the classic kill monsters and free the bells, but it has a great pacing with how you only start off with a knife and a tiger, but slowly you get a bow, the holster to fire more arrows, and later on a battle elephant. It progresses perfectly and the pacing is great, and the levels themselves are fairly short. I honestly wish that every Far Cry game would try and include something like this, because it just plays like a different game. Oh well, I can't wait to talk more about these mechanics in the Far Cry Primal video. So, the one thing I kinda disliked about doing all these quests is that there is not really a huge reward at the end. Like, why can't we get the bow from the Shangri-La sections after completing every single painting? It would have been cool as hell to use it in the normal world. I'm not sure if you can't overlap things from there to the base game, but that makes no sense because we get to use the bow later on in the game. And the only reward we get is after completing a few of these you can unlock a certain skill points, which makes it easier to aim with a bow and it reduces the sway. I'm not sure, but it's just so disappointing to not get rewards for your labor, and I will return to this point later on in the story, but for now I want to be rewarded for actually finishing these things. Well, while we are on the side quest, let's continue with Longinus. He still has some more quests for you, because remember the blood diamonds. There are more of them that are missing and you are to recover them, which means that you need to follow an envoy to a certain location, and if you are spotted, he will alert the ones there, and otherwise you can just go in sneaky and kill the rest. You pick up the blood diamonds and you drop them off at different locations. All in all, these are okay, but they get repetitive fast, because they pretty much just copy paste the same thing 4 times. The only reason I continue with these was because the dialogue with Longinus is quite intriguing. He tells you more about his sins that he has committed in his previous life, and after collecting the last diamond, you meet him in his tent where he is drunk out of his mind, where he reveals that he comes from a distant land which was full of death and misery, and how he stood with the devil for a long time, and how each diamond reflects a different person that he met and paid him for certain favors, and I assume that he never fulfilled these favors, and now he has the diamonds as a reminder of his past life and failure as a human. There's still more work to do, and he seems committed to finishing it, so you go out for one last ride to find the last diamond, bring it back to the camp, and Longinus is already packing as he has now fulfilled his goal because he has all the diamonds back. And how the Lord is calling him elsewhere, and how he's going to maybe South America, even Cuba. Is Longinus in Far Cry 6? Question mark? At least we get a pretty good reward for his questline, because we get one of the best RPGs in the game, which will take down any vehicle, and where you aim it, the missile will go. All in all, these missions are boring, the mission structure is awful and repetitive. The only thing that differed between them was the way you follow the enemy to the safe house, be it in a car, on foot, helicopter or boat, but it's not enough variation. And I'm quite weirded out why they could not have made these quests more unique, and maybe we even meet someone from his past who wants revenge on him or something. Still, the good thing is that these quests are short, and the best part is Longinus himself. I actually used to hate his cutscenes when I first played the game, but now after analyzing his speeches, the connection to the Bible and God, and how he was probably in Far Cry 2, I have grown to like him a lot. So, continuing the main story, the next Golden Path mission are more about going on the offensive, since they have now gotten the shipments from Longinus, and now when they have a whole arsenal at their feet, they can actually start to fight back and take back territory. And there is a discussion regarding a T-shipment, which is slang for opium, and its fields which Sabal wants to wipe out, while Amita wants to secure the drugs and the fields to make money for Kirat. Sabal is against this, of course, because he does not want Kirat to turn into a drug state, but Amita has a good point in terms of the country's lack of resources. How would they have a functional economy when they are free from Pagan? Because all the mines have been stripped bare and all the fields are ruined. How Kirat no longer has any valuable natural resources? It's an interesting point, but at the same time, what's the difference between her idea and Pagan's? They are doing pretty much the same thing, just different colors. And do we really want to support another Pagan? And this argument feels similar to pragmatism versus moralism. So I decided to go with Sabal here because there has to be other ways than to become a drug state. And when you become a drug state, you tend to never leave being a drug state. So instead invest in tourism and education, not drugs. Also, your international reputation would go down in flames if you would start to ship drugs. And it would cause a lot more crime, and we would probably need the fields to actually create food for the population. And I kinda like this mission, as you can play either stealthy or going guns blazing, and the objective is to destroy the sprinklers so they can't put out the fires when you burn the fields. You also have to destroy all the opium stacks, and there are a ton of enemies here, so guns and blazing is the way for me. And it's kinda funny and ironic how burning drug fields is in nearly every single Far Cry game after this. It's just something satisfying about burning stuff down, especially drugs. When you meet with Amita again, she is furious at AJ for burning down the fields. And what I don't understand here is that she's trying to justify the drugs by saying they would be used for medicine. The issue I find with this is that this is new information after we made the choice to burn up the fields. If she would have said that the drug fields could be used for a good cause and create medicine from it, we the players would have been more inclined to actually accept her proposal to keep the fields intact. But getting the information afterwards just feels like it's here to guilt trip us. And it's probably not what Amita intended for in the first place. And I don't think that Amita actually believed in this herself. It seems that Amita is starting to lose it as she starts to open up about herself, that she was told to be married off at the age of 6, and how that's not a world she wants or can accept. And that Sabal would keep this tradition alive of children being married off. She tells him that the Kira statues are going to be blown up by Paul and we need to stop them. Now, if we would have helped Amita and saved the drug fields, we get this.
Jay, I can't tell you what saving those fields means to the future of Kirat. Supplies, weapons, ammunition, vehicles, everything the Golden Path needs to take the fight to Pagan men. I wasn't sure about you. That first time in Banapur, all I saw was Sabal and his puppet. But you are not a puppet, are you? Now I can see what you're capable of. What a difference you've made!
Now, one disappointing aspect that I found with after watching all these cinematics when siding with someone is that I thought that every single time you did not side with a person, you would have a cutscene with a person you did not side with. But apparently that's not the case. For example, in the first Golden Path quest on Intel, it ends with you talking to Sabal regardless of the choice you do, and he will be either mad or happy about your choice. And the tea plantation will be the same but with Amita, and this feels a bit like a slap in the face. If we always had scenes with whoever we did not side with, it would create more replayability and we would see more of their perspective, but now it just feels a bit redundant. So after saving the Kira statues from being blown up by sabotaging the different explosives and later holding on incoming enemies, we travel back to Noore, who has just tortured one of Paul's men to death, more or less. She has found out that he is leaving for America soon and that there is no time to wait and that AJ must go and kill him now and save Noore's family, and she will do anything in return. What I don't understand is why AJ has to do it now, because unless I misunderstood something, but this is just a casual visit home to the US for Paul, as he's a family man and he needs to keep up the charade, because in the lore it seems that even Pagan came with him back to the US for a trip, so it seems that these are quite regular. Noore is acting as if he's never coming back. Noore wants Paul dead, but the Golden Path wants him alive, but you must first get to one of the trucks that delivers the women to his compound, which is a bit hard as you can't really kill anyone because you can raise suspicion, and it even bugged out for me.
Send him running! What's the mean?
So you climb into the truck and off you go. Sabal wants you to save anyone you find, as is his character. And this area is, it's interesting, as it's a complete stealth mission which is actually good. You have multiple paths to choose from to reach your location, and you can kill people as long as you hide the bodies. The lighting here is perfect for a stealth mission as it takes place during the night and you can clearly see the lights where you will be spotted and where you want, so you always hide in the shadows, and it's just a cool visual dynamic here. And first you need to free all the slaves, which are at 3 different locations, and the name City of Pain is a fitting name for the place as there are torture instruments everywhere, like knives, pliers, needles, and how people are treated like cattle and just slaves. And if you're ever spotted, it's game over because the rest will be alarmed. The Plur's house is probably the crown jewel of this place, as all the people he interrogates are chopped up into pieces and fed to the pigs, as you can see the body count as the pit is filled with bones from previous victims. So in a cool sequence, Ajay frees the interrogation victim that the Plur is about to torture and swaps position with him to get a jump on him, and the way he talks like any loving dad with his family while he's plundering dead corpses shows just how twisted and desensitized this man is.
Alright. You know, it's okay, it's okay. Just put her on really quick. No, it's okay, put her on. Yeah. I'll be right with you. Hi, Ashley. You did? That is amazing! Good girl. Are you getting ready for bed? Did you brush your teeth? For at least 10 seconds? That's my girl. Gonna give your mom a big kiss for me? Well, you know, she gets lonely when I'm not there. You are the lady of the house.
And how he's willing to do anything for his family, but also that he probably enjoys what he's doing. Having him give one of the dead people's golden necklace as a present to his daughter is just sick. You knock Paul out, and now you need to sneak out of the city without alerting anyone while carrying Paul's corpse, where you can only use your sidearm. You can also put him down on the ground to kill the enemies, but after only getting a small distance away, the alarm goes off and all the enemies become alert due to the Plur being gone. I believe I killed pretty much every single soldier here because it was just simpler. You stuff the Plur in the back of the trunk and drive away. Paul will talk with you while in the trunk, and the interesting part here is he does not hate or dislike Ajay by no means. He never swears at him and is actually trying to have a reasonable discussion with him. He confesses that Noore's family has been dead for years, and for him it's just comedy and a laughing matter.
Noore sends her regards.
Noore? Noore?
And how he wrote her letters to ensure that she thought her family was alive, and even using his own daughter to lie about their family as she only thought she was writing to a pen pal. And we know the Plur is a sadistic person as he tells it straight out in the opening of the game when he tortures Darpan. And yeah, this is actually a hidden scene-ish, because the first thing in the prologue when you escape the estate is that he is down in his torture room with Darpan, and you can skip this scene if you want, but if you stay long enough there is some interesting scenes regarding his character. He sees himself as a good guy, and Darpan as a terrorist, therefore a bad person. The topic seems to be about how he knows about Ajay and what they want to do with him. It's interesting how this seems to be the most vital information that Pagan wants, not their overall war plans, sabotage, movements, etc., but just about what they want with Ajay. The Plur probably hosts some hate towards third world countries, or just Kirat, but more the natives, as his previous job he got downsized and they moved, or his previous job, to a third world country. He keeps his job from his family. He wouldn't mind moving to Kirat, but his family would never understand or accept what he's doing. And we get a Dr. Phil reference out of everything, that in order to be happy, he needs to find his inner truth and embrace the things he's good at. And well, he's good at torturing people. And he seems to be the person, or rather the traditional husband who needs to provide for his family regardless of what he has to do.
Supporting my family, I am the fucking man. My face. It's a good smile, right? You know, when I say I can do this all day. So, why don't you just let it all go? Yeah. How do you know Ajay, Dale?
And the scene is quite poorly paced actually, as this is not what any player wants to do after escaping the first room, because this scene is too long, we don't really know who the Deplore is yet, and it feels like this scene should have been somewhere later in the game, especially since a lot of players probably missed or ignored this scene as it's only optional and you probably just wanna get out. And the issue with this car drive is that it's too short. It took me maybe a little over a minute to drive to the location, while Paul has dialogue for over 3 minutes. The mission waypoint was simply too short, and many players probably missed the whole dialogue with Paul due to this. It's a weird design choice because you miss stuff like him talking about how anything is possible in this country and everything is allowed, how AJ is great at killing and he's great at torture.
Come on, take a look around you. This place was built for guys like us. Do you really care what happens to anyone here, huh? Or are you just jonesing to get back out there and leave a trail of bodies in your wake? Rhetorical question. You don't care about Noore's kid or her husband. Huh? I mean, quick, what were their names? You even know? That's what I thought.
He even calls back to Dr. Phil of finding your own truth and how Noore is naive for thinking her kids are still alive. He even tries to negotiate with AJ that if he just drives into the airport, he will be gone. Hell, he will even buy a ticket for AJ, but according to people who drove him to the airport, nothing will happen, so don't even try it. So that was just fluff. So again, I wonder, why was the location we had to drive so short if any normal player would probably miss this dialogue? And also, it reduces Paul's character because it removes a lot of character development from him. Just a weird design choice. Now, there are 2 different options here. Drive to the Golden Path location as you are instructed, or drive out of a cliff or destroy the car with his body inside and kill him. The former will have the Golden Path guards drag him off while he resists, calling them savages. And this is probably the main reason why he's able to do what he's doing. He sees these people as less than human and they do not have any human rights. He likes AJ because he's mostly American, I think, but he completely freaks out and pleads to AJ to let him answer the phone as it's his daughter calling him. You can later on though find him in a cage while the phone is still ringing and he is crying, and you can kill him if you want and he won't respawn. And all in all, this quest was interesting and enjoyable, but I have issues with how little screen time Deplore actually has in the game, because he's an interesting villain, but he feels truly underutilized as we have only met him in person once before, at the start of the game, where we don't even interact with him. We hear about him from others, but we never form this bond that makes me wanna stop or kill him. It's just too fast. We needed at least one more mission with Deplore, maybe speaking to his family, or hell, one of the worst things we could do to him would be to reveal exactly what he's doing to his family. So yeah, maybe a spy mission where we record and take photos of him and then find out his family's phone number or email and send it to them, and they will in turn freak out and turn on Paul, hating him for what he has done and become, and then we can have the final confrontation with him where he is just an unhinged broken person because he has no longer anything to live for, or to excuse his action he has done since he no longer has a family. It's just Too bad, because it could have been something interesting and he needed more screen time. But you know who did not need more screen time in the game? Yogi and Reggie. Needs some of your help because they move out of the house and you can actually start to do quests for them. And by quests, no, these are not quests. These are barely quests. I don't even know why you would ever do it except for the requirement for the skill points. This feels so out of place as these side missions do not do anything for the golden path or the war at all. It's just messing around, fucking around, doing mindless stuff in the worst possible way. Seriously, we once again get drugged by the needle like the first time when testing some of the drugs, okay, and we wake up in this weird world where everything has this red-orange filter with the same music tone playing on a loop, which gets annoying fast. You can see every enemy through the walls in this wacky world. It's as if you have hunter's vision on permanently. Everything is just whack here with animals attacking Pagan's men, and your mission is to reach Yogi and Reggie to get your shit back. And it's just so wild in here, it's hard to explain. You start with no gear, so you have to pick up the enemy's weapons. These maps are way too long for the little content they actually provide, because the goal is just to go to these different locations, and then when you find them, they will morph into enemies, rinse and repeat, and you actually find the real ones watching something on an iPad, some of about their previous trips, and yeah, you gain a new recipe as a reward, but this could have just been something different instead to unlock instead of a whole quest line, because we're not done yet. The second mission revolves around, guess what? The same thing, as you try a new drug batch, and yeah, you are just a drug guinea pig. And it seems that every time he tries a new drug, he gets a shot and goes off into Alice in Wonderland. This time, everything is on fire, while you have this weird color filter taking over the screen, and it just looks bland. Flaming pigs will attack you, you find them, you get the gear, and it's over. The third mission, the same thing. Just smoke drugs to test their batch, get drugged by the needle, go into the trance again. This time you need to swim and follow the lights. You later get on a water scooter and drive on the water as boats are exploding all around you, and suddenly trucks start to fall out of the sky. And giant pieces of statues start to emerge from the water. You later find your gear in a nearby house, and that's it. And I'm asking once again, what is the point of these missions? The last mission for them is, well, yeah, it's the same as the others. You test a new batch, you get drugged, the needle goes somewhere else this time. At least, it's something new.
Oh, sorry mate, this one's gotta go in your van.
In my what?
Here.
Wait.
And in this vision, you fly, or not. But yeah, this level is all about heights, as you are transported to different locations high up in the sky or in towers. At least you don't take fall damage, I guess. And it is kinda cool actually. Hell, you even get to fly the mini chopper. And while you fly, you see Reggie and Yogi standing on various wooden platforms dancing, being high, I guess. But again, these missions have no meaning or rhyme. They are just there for show. There is no substance. So you get to the last location, you open a door, and you win. And you get a pipe as a reward, which you can't even use, and I am annoyed that they made a quest line for these people, and 4 of these quests in total. What a complete waste of time for the player, but also what a waste of development time to even include these missions. Sure, they are colorful and psychedelic, but I don't know if they try to recreate the same effects or dream sequences of Far Cry 3. The issue is, those sequences actually mattered. They had nuance, they told you more about Jason, future events, and foreshadowing. These are just cheap, low effort, no meaning, and honest to God, I cannot tell you why these were made. But if you thought you were done being drugged, oh no, it will continue later on in the main story. But yeah, last comment on Yogi and Reggie, fuck these quests. Awful choice to have these as side quests in the game. Thankfully, The next Golden Path mission is to decide who to support regarding the drug factory, where you interact with Amita, who starts talking about being the first woman in the Golden Path again, where she is the one pushing for change while everyone else backtalks her as a defiler of tradition and destroying their legacy, and how she is just as much of a fighter, but they only see her as a woman. And she says she is a fighter, but I have never seen her actually do any fighting compared to Sabal. Okay, she is actually showing her vulnerable side, where she is not that confident in herself, or why she does not have the same control or respect as Sabal. So the drugs and the fields that you burned in the last mission, well, all of those drugs had been shipped to an old brick factory for processing into, well, the drugs. Sabal wants to destroy the factory, while Amita wants to keep it intact, but killing all the enemies inside. What's interesting is when you talk to Sabal to hear his suggestion, he points out exactly what Amita did by giving out her sub-story about her being the first woman of the Golden Path, and he's right. Amita went from being unsure of herself, the sub-story, and instantly changed her tone regarding saving the brick factory, as she wants the drugs to be their nation's future. So I kinda believe in Sabal that Amita was lying here to gain sympathy from Ajay, so I decided to work with Sabal once again. And I have some issues with this mission, as it's mostly tied to the previous Golden Path mission, or rather, this one is just the same. It's about the drug question once again. Sure, there is more information regarding what Amita wants to do with the drugs, you know, making medicine, but she could have said that before the last mission, so this mission is fairly redundant. And it should have been about a different topic that Sabal and Amita are clashing on, maybe something to do with the tradition of marrying off underage girls. This feels like a huge loss of opportunity, as it's just a repeat of the same previous quest and the same talking points from Amita and Sabal. The mission itself, it's fun. When you play to destroy it, you have to mount the elephants to take down the huge cables holding the central chimney, and later planting bombs inside the building and bring it down with an explosion, which looks awesome. And later jumping inside the building, planting bombs and killing all the enemies who will just keep on coming. So you kill them, you leave the building, you blow up the C4, and honestly I'm a bit disappointed with the explosion here when you blow up the building. It's kind of a letdown compared to when you bring down the chimney, which looks awesome compared to it. Because I want to see bricks land up in the mountains from blowing up this building. And if you side with Amita, you instead need to secure the whole factory by killing off every single enemy and disarming explosives as they are put inside the building, all while they are pumping it full with toxic gas. Either party will thank you after siding with them, and just like in previous quests, there will be some different dialogue with them later on. The arguments between Sabal and Amita are heating up as they are starting to insult each other, and Amita is great at pushing Sabal's buttons.
Tradition? Like what? Marrying little girls, is that it? Is that your big plan for Bhadra? Oh, go for it. Go ahead, show Ajay what kind of man you are.
I don't answer to you.
However, they both agree that Noore has outlived her usefulness, and even though she gave them Paul, they want her dead. Ajay is still a bit naive in this situation and defends her, but they make a great point. How many lives and families has she taken to save her own? So, you sneak into the arena and actually go behind the scenes, where you mess with the fights by releasing rhinos, tigers and bears into the arena, creating mayhem. You reach Noore, who does not fight back, and she actually wants Ajay to kill her, and you get the choice to shoot her or just wait. And I chose not to kill her, as I didn't feel it was my call. She completely loses it, cuts her arm to the cheer of the audience who is only there for blood. And the irony is that she is the one that made the audience into what they are. She is the one who inserted their taste for blood. Ironic. So she does a leap of faith the wrong way and is eaten by the tiger and the bear, and that's the end of Noore. Noore, just like Deplore, is an underutilized character that could have had so much more depth to her. Having her being naive about her family could still work. Maybe she deluded herself into that kind of thinking to justify what she was doing to the people in the arena and how she actually started to like it after a while, but no, she is just naive or stupid. Maybe she only made the stuff up to trick Ajay into going after Deplore to raise her rank within Pagan's domain. That could have been better. I don't know, just something more, because once again, I don't care about her. This is the third scene I see with her, but these are just too short. So now we have two of the more important side characters which have no build up to, and I simply don't care about them. What a waste! So I was looking up all the radio calls between Pagan and Ajay, and many of these are quite, well, random, and some of them might not even trigger at all during your playthrough. For example, I never got this conversation where Pagan talks about Noore, how she was a humanitarian and a doctor when she came to Kyrat on a aid mission. She complained to Pagan about the awful working conditions of the people living there. So he promised he would change things and invited both her and her family back to Kyrat and met them at one of his mansions, and Pagan is an evil son of a bitch.
I put them up in the palace. I even put on a little meeting for her. I made a PowerPoint to a 12-step action plan to address Kyrat's human rights violations. Except each slide was about how I was going to ruin Noore's life. So Paul Deplore kept her family hostage while I forced the great humanitarian Dr. Najjar to run the most terrible parts of my Kirati empire. Oh, between you and I think she actually enjoys it now.
And yeah, this kinda confirmed my theory regarding how Noore probably already knows that her family is dead and how she has started to like what she is doing. She has gotten addicted to the power as she is toying and deciding human lives, and it's quite ironic how she used to save lives but is now ending them. But the issue with this is I would never have known about this if not for the videos with all of their conversations, and this is straight up criminal as these are really important story bits for Noore's character which are not brought up sometimes. And this makes us sympathize even more with her character and understand more about her backstory and just how truly evil and sadistic Pagan is. What a shame. Afterwards though, you get a phone call from a mysterious person who needs some help, and most people probably recognize this person from just his voice. So remember when I told you it's impossible to tell which side quests are main quest and vice versa? Yeah, these new missions from Willis, and if you remember, he's in Far Cry 3 as the CIA agent who helps Jason to find some of his friends and get him to the southern island. So these seem like side quests at first, but no, you need to finish them all to progress the main story. And this is just confusing as to why these are not main missions as they actually tackle one of the main antagonists and Pagan's right arm, Yuma. Anyway, Willis seems to know everything about Ajay and wants some help from Ajay at a nearby airfield. He offers some juicy intel in return. You need to secure the airport by killing all the different snipers and later taking a position where you can see Willis making the trade. And I love the safe word when to shoot.
I'm in position. Stay there and watch my back. I've got a quick little sit down to deal with before we can chat. If this meeting goes south, I'll give you a signal.
What kind of signal?
When I say Reaganomics, open fire and don't stop till all the bad guys are gone.
Reaganomics?
Okay.
Now, you need to defend Willis, and this is actually a slightly difficult section as there are way too many enemies here and they only focus on killing Willis, which makes it quite difficult to kill every single person running after him. Hell, they even start to use mortars to rain down fire, and afterwards you do get some more dialogue with Willis, and he just eats up the screen whenever he mentions Jason.
Look at you. American on the inside and useful on the outside. You're the perfect wolf in sheep herder's clothing. Way better than the SoCal douchebag I had to babysit at my last stop. You're both patriots, though. Both the type that'll put your hand over your gosh darn heart when you hear the Star-Spangled Banner at a 4th of July ball game.
Useful on the outside.
It seems like one of the enemies survived and he's taking off in a plane which contains the files regarding AJ's father. You follow it with a four-wheeler where you jump off after leaping off the edge of the mountain, and you open your wingsuit, and you kinda need to hit the plane at the correct angle, because I went to the plane from above and I got a cutscene, but I just died afterwards, like what the fuck? So you need to hit it from below or on its level, and you get one, if not the coolest kill animation of all time. And so the files that Willis said was on the plane, well, they're useless and a dud. Willis tells AJ that the more he helps him, the more black bars will be removed and more information will be revealed to AJ about his family. So again, I don't see why this would ever be a main quest, but it is. The second mission will have you go with him to the Himalayas, where he needs some of Yuma's agents to be killed off, and he gives you some information regarding your father, who worked for Willis to gain weapon shipments during the last civil war when he was still working with Pagan. He will give AJ more information after the job. And these assassination jobs are pretty difficult as there is a ton of enemies patrolling and there are even helicopters chasing you. The map is beautiful, fighting around temples in snowy terrain, there is a lot of cover to use, but the whole killing people, and then of course they are not the target, gets old really fast. But you have to be careful because the enemy will swarm you if you don't thin them out. The mission is still coherent as you keep on chasing the commander through caves where Yuma has her dig sites for ancient artifacts, to chasms and rope bridges where the enemy will start to use RPGs against you. And after killing the commander, Willis leaves more information regarding your father in a journal at the airport? This kinda sucks because why do I need to travel all the way to the airport to pick this up? Just give it to me as a reward. Willis is great at using people for his own gain. Fortunately, there's only one more mission you have to do for Willis. The last mission with Willis involves you going back to the Himalayas. He reveals that your dad tried to kill your mom because she was about to escape Kirat to the USA, and how she was spying on Pagan but fell in love with him. And he will give AJ the last bit of information after he kills one more of Yuma's top guys. And I love this scenery as you need to use your wingsuit to get to the place, and it's one long trip. And I wish more missions would take place just like this. And the kicker in this mission is that you must keep the body intact of the enemy general and use a knife to kill him, which makes the mission slightly harder as you need to sneak and not get detected. And of course, you have to take a picture of him. And after killing him, you have to escape the place with your wingsuit and meet up with Willis, and this trip with the wingsuit is quite adrenaline-inducing as you need to dodge rockets, mountainsides, snow and everything in between to reach the end where you go through a narrow gap in a cave. After meeting up with Willis, he reveals that you have gone around killing CIA assets as they are cutting all loose ties, and how Pagan is no longer a threat to the US. But everything he told you about your family was correct. So Willis betrays AJ and kicks him out of the plane, where he's taken prisoner by Yuma, and this is the end of Act 2.
You left the bag on his head? Well, can he breathe? Did you at least punch holes so he doesn't suffocate? Hello. Did we enjoy our time with the CIA? Welcome to Dagesh. I apologize for the Spartan accommodations, but you have been a naughty little shit, haven't you? Gallivanting about with a golden half. And poor Paul. Are you still sore about what he did with your little monkey friend? What was his name? Deadpan, dipshit, doorknob? I'm sorry for your ennui. But let me ease him into this, Yuma. You're about to mindfuck the poor boy. Perhaps a little sugar on your shit sandwich?
Whatever, you've seen him. He's still breathing. Now go away, I've got work to do.
Fine. But I want him alive, with all the bits that count intact. One last thing. Now, Ajay, I know this is hard, but consider this tough love, prison love. After all, you have a suite with a spectacular view. Oh, and one final piece of advice. I wouldn't sleep too close to the edge.
This is basically Yuma's torture / indoctrination prison where AJ, again, gets drugged, and I promise I will explain exactly why all of this is pissing me off so much, but that's for later. So for the first time in the game, all of your weapons are taken away in the main story mission, a staple in the franchise that happens at least once in every game. It's almost like tradition. Actually, we actually get some creepy scenes with Yuma during her best exorcist impressions. Every other prisoner in here seems to have gone completely crazy. You read some of the notes left in a cell where two people found a way to climb down the mountain, but first they need a hook and a rope. But they were starting to go insane and start to talk about demons roaming the halls, but they might have been telling the truth as one of the prisoners ran out in front of us and jumped down to their doom. And for some reason Yuma speaks in your mind that this place was built by the followers of Kalinag, and the Kalinag, the one who we played in the Shang Ri sections. And Yuma is obsessed by this. So you need to sneak down the halls and get the rope and hook to get out of here, but the demons from Shangri-La are here and they are actually difficult to invade and kinda scary, and they will chase you if you are detected. You have no weapons so you can't fight back, and in most cases you are just dead if you are detected. The place is also built like a labyrinth, so be ready to panic if you are chased. There's also this really weird pumping filter which is directly connected to AJ's heartbeat. It's interesting and cool, but it distorts the screen a little bit too much and gets annoying. Now, if you die, you will wake up in your cell and you get some additional dialogue with Yuma that a lot of players may not have seen because you actually have to die to get this scene. And she says that she did not kill Mohan, and if she could have killed anyone it would have been Ishwari, who she sees as a...
I could have killed anyone. It would have been Ishwari, your whore of a mother.
And says that if you jump off the ledge, she will scatter her ashes for him. And I tried it, and nothing happens after you jump to your death, so that kinda sucks. So Yuma just lied, I guess. You just wake up in the cell again and the whole process starts over once again. Although it is cool that we can get this alternative dialogue with Yuma, seeing as many players probably did not die in this conversation, it hurts her character because she barely has any scenes in the game to flesh her out more. I don't mind the alternative dialogue, but it can't be at the cost of her character development, because the first time I finished the game, I did not care about her at all, because she has barely been in the game. So, you get the hook and the rope and you can now finally get out of this prison. While climbing down, we hear Yuma talk about when Pagan spiraled into despair, she found her true calling, which is Kalinag, and how she will reach Shangri-La and defeat Rakshasa, which we have already done. which we have kinda already done. Sorry about that, Yuma. And then she will be reborn just like Kalinag, and how she will take Pagan's place and build a great civilization here in Kyrat. So yeah, she is completely obsessed and crazy. And this section is probably the hardest in the game, as you need to sneak by a ton of enemies who are all armed to the teeth and you have nothing. You have two options, which is getting to the tower where you can find a ton of awesome and strong weapons, but there is a ton of enemies between you and those weapons. Or you can sneak out, or in my case, run faster than light, into the snowstorm where you pass out and you see the snowman? The Yeti? Bigfoot? Asian Bigfoot? Huh, interesting how he is real in the Far Cry universe. I just hope he won't be in a DLC. Well, shit. You wake up with Sabal at your side, who has been looking for you for over a week, tracking you down and eventually found you. You can say many things about Sabal, but he's loyal to you and he would risk his life for you, unlike Amita, who seems to not have lifted a finger to look for you, but also that Ajay is good for the cause, which Amita, she will never understand it. It's finally time to take the battle to the north towards Pagan Min, as the south has been completely freed, and you need to capture a chemical truck to use to blast through the bridge, which is protected by a blast-resistant door. Sabal calls you and tells you to capture another nearby fuel truck because he does not want Amita to take the credit for the plan, so you drive through smoke, enemy patrols and everything in between, while listening to optimistic Indian music. You need to jump out at the last minute or you will die. Once inside, you need to capture the outpost, which is heavily guarded by snipers, RPG guys, mortars, MG nests, and a ton of reinforcements after capturing it. You need to defend it as Pagan's forces are trying to recapture it. The Golden Path forces are on the way, but you need to defend it on your own until they are there. And Sabal is credited for the plan when the soldiers finally reach you. Afterwards, Sabal wants you to reach a town where the northern Golden Path members are located, so you can try and combine their forces together once again. The leaders are down in a hidden basement where they have been stocking weapons, but all of a sudden, Pagan Min, in the flesh, comes to visit. And it's just a great scene which reminds me of Inglourious Basterds, probably based on it.
A lovely couple to match a lovely home. Very salt of the earth. You know, I was told that if I ever wanted to experience the hospitality of Utkarsh, that I had to visit the Ranas. Oh, we questioned everyone too. And everyone said the exact same thing. They are the friendliest. They will talk to anyone. To anyone, I said. To everyone, they said. But they were so emphatic that I decided I had to see it for myself. He's cute. You see, I wanted to warn you.
Warn us, sir?
Yes. Now, I'm not sure if you've heard, but it's come to my attention that there are some very disreputable people around. And I'm concerned that these people, these terrorists, well, they might take advantage of your hospitality. Maybe ruin your wonderful reputation. And we wouldn't want that to happen, now would we?
No, sir.
No. Well, would you allow me to protect you? To ensure your reputation?
Please, yes, Kingman.
Your wish is my command. I'm so glad we could agree on this. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. This should only take a moment. And they say I've lost touch with my subjects.
The thing about this is that the Golden Path willingly used these people as a shield to hide, and this is one of the things I'm not that fond of the Golden Path doing, risking civilian life even if they agree with it. Ajay goes after Pagan as this is his best chance he has gotten thus far to kill him, so you jump on a small mini chopper and fly around while blasting him with explosives, and I got him in 4 shots and he barely drove anywhere, so Pagan is dead and that was easy. Well, not quite. As you get close to his body, Pagan calls you, and the Pagan that you killed was just a double body.
Pagan? I just killed you! No, you just ruined a perfectly good body double with hair loss. Do you know how expensive he was to make? He wasn't even Asian, for Christ's sake. He was from Melbourne, I think. His only crime was being born with fabulous cheekbones. Whose picture do you think's on the money?
I love Pagan. Sabal tells you to meet up with him and the rest of the Golden Path as Pagan is going to do a live broadcast On the TV, and for some reason again, there is no voice and no volume, only background voice. I have no idea why this is happening to me. Anyway, he says how the rumors regarding his death are false and how the army is still going to defend them, how Noore and Deplore have left them, and I love that it could either be that they have just gone away or they are dead. He mainly focuses on how Yuma will protect Pagan and how she needs to go down before anyone else can get to him and how she will take on any challenge, and it's obvious he's goading and tricking AJ and the Golden Path into going after her. Unfortunately, the game has to point this out and spell it out when you meet Yuma. Like, come on, trust your audience to actually understand the nuance of this information from Pagan. So, you go to kill Yuma, who is located in an abandoned gold mine. Pagan rages in and apologizes for her first impressions and how he would have wanted her and AJ to get on better terms. She is mostly behind his successes and she forged deals with international buyers, you know, remember selling all the valuables of the country off. How she kept watch and controlled Noore and Deplore and run his army. Until she started to become obsessed with Kalanag and Shang Ri, which she has tried to keep away from him, and you are ambushed and drugged by Yuma again. Please, can we once stop with the drug sequence? I have counted them all and there are 7 in total. Please, stop it. Again, these visions, they lack meaning or reason. In Far Cry 3, every one of those drug scenes and when your dream scenes were essential, but they are just here because people like them in Far Cry 3. They don't understand why people like them. People like the drug scenes because they were insightful and interesting. It was not just because of, whoa, what's going on here? I find the boss fight with Yuma to be quite underwhelming because imagine if you have already finished all of the Shangri-La missions and you know the whole story there. Hell, you are probably the person closest to Kalinag because you actually collected the 5 paintings which he himself commissioned, so you probably have a better connection with that world than Yuma. At least give us some different dialogue with her, or hell, have us win the boss fight from the start because you become Kalinag instead of Yuma, as you have shown a much stronger bond with him and the legend that he chooses you, and Yuma goes completely crazy. It would have been way cooler than just getting the bow in the boss fight. And why do we get the bow? Why? And we get it regardless of progression with the Shangri-La story, and again, I find this to be such a huge issue. It's just a sporadic campaign that does not take into account what side quests you have done before the main quest. I just see lost potential here. And so yeah, after being drugged you see Yuma turn into Kalinag and starts raving about how Pagan sent AJ to kill her, and after everything she has done for him, she gives some more backstory regarding Pagan, how he used to be fearless and nobody could stand in his way before he met AJ's mother Ishwari, and they try to do the same scene as in Far Cry 3, where you can see the future regarding the Golden Path and Amita and Sabal. You gain the bow from the Shangri-La world and you have to defeat a ton of hunters. You have no other weapons and no health packs, so it's all about spamming that bow. And after breaching the gates, you get some additional dialogue with Yuma, how she thought Pagan would return to his former self and how Pagan was broken after Ishwari left him, and how he would not break her, how the country will not break her, and how AJ won't break her. And there is some cool rope swinging in the section through some neat looking backgrounds and temples, and at the end you find Yuma seducing AJ, being able to copy herself, and I guess we get a jump scare. And Yuma shoots AJ in the head and we are transported into an arena where Yuma will do what Pagan can't and kill AJ and then mix his ashes with his mother's into pig slop, okay? The fight is her turning into Kalinag, where she has the white tiger and the demons or hunters to help her. You again have the bow, which can slow down time, you have unlimited arrows, you have to deal enough damage to Kalinag and then perform a takedown. She will spawn the white tiger and hunters and demons throughout the fight. You do your last takedown and go mental on him, or her I guess. And AJ wakes up with Yuma dead besides him and a ton of soldiers. So yeah, Yuma was Kalinag and all the other warriors were the hunters and demons that you faced. Again, they copied the exact scene from Far Cry 3 with Jason going into these boss fights and then waking up with heaps of bodies around him not knowing what he did. It's... they are copying everything from the game but they don't understand it. I can't believe I'm saying this for the third time, but it's necessary. Yuma is another disappointment, cause she had some interesting traits regarding becoming obsessed with Shang Ri. That's interesting. And how she was actually planning to stab Pagan in the back because she did not think he was no longer fit to rule. That's a great premise. But if you have not paid any attention to the quests and the environments or even the Shangri-La missions, you don't understand Yuma's obsession with Shangri-La. She is only one cutscene for a short amount of time before the last confrontation with her. And as I mentioned, you can miss a really important segment with her if you don't die during the prison mission. Again, I don't understand the setup for these missions. 3 people now. 3 people. And I don't care about any one of them. Yuma looked cool. She had 2 cutscenes. And she had 1 before the last one where we kill her. Why? And again, all of these drug scenes is that we never get to know anything about AJ. Give us a flashback when he was younger. Know more about his mother. Hearing her talk over the phone with someone, just something. Please, make this character something already. It's infuriating how hard you're trying to not make AJ a character or have him talk, except for small quips. Even when Willis is revealing a ton of information about his parents, he barely reacts. What the fuck is going on here? This makes no sense. So with Yuma's death, Pagan's army has been weakened and it's time to decide the leader of the Golden Path as you meet up with Badra and ask her about being Tarun Matara, where she tells us more about the temple, which is the holiest site for the karate tradition, but also that Amita wants to destroy the temple as it will free the women of Karat and break away from the outdated traditions like the Tarun Matara, and Sabal wants to capture the temple and complete the ceremony and make Badra the Tarun Matara, and how embracing tradition will make them all stronger. Badra wants to free Karat, but she can't choose herself as Amita and Sabal will never agree to what she would decide, which leaves AJ to decide. And I don't know, the pat he gives on Badra's shoulder while saying he thinks he knows what he's gotta do feels like he's going with Amita to free her. So you go and listen to both proposals where Sabal is furious that Amita would move on to the temple and that she's going to destroy it, and he keeps on comparing her to Pagan. I mean, he's not wrong about it. While Amita is more calm as she says it's not about destroying the temple, it's about sending a message. And I believe the writer watched The Dark Knight before writing this line. Amita wants to destroy the past and look towards the future where there is no longer a Tarun Matara, which will expose Sabal for what he is, a simple-minded fool. Hell, she wants to take everything of value inside the temple, melt it down and then sell it overseas, and she is exactly like Pagan Min, but because that's exactly what he has been doing. The mission being called Culture Class is definitely fitting. I decided to side with Sabal because he felt like the lesser evil here, and he has saved AJ's life now countless of times while Amita has been sitting on her ass, not even trying to help AJ. And her way is just too destructive because if there has to be a past, you can't just throw everything away. The most negative aspect of Sabal is keeping the tradition of the Tarun Matara and how children can be married off while they are still just kids. It's something that no one can really support. It's just like Geralt when having to choose an evil and a lesser evil, and I would rather not choose at all, but you have to. And in this case, I think Sabal is the lesser evil. So first you need to secure the temple, which is under Pagan's control, and you need to infiltrate and disarm all the bombs which are located at the top of the tower and underground. And this is the easy part, as afterwards the alarms will go off and waves of enemies will attack by boat and air. But fortunately, you have a ton of MGs and grenade launchers to use to dispose the enemies. And there are many boats that it's almost impossible to kill them all before they come to shore. And after defending the temple, we get a cutscene with Sabal making Badra into the Tarun Matara. And man, she does not really look happy at all, looking down into the ground while the soldier behind is looking happy. It's a sickening look, as this is not something we want to support, and maybe it would be better to burn down the whole system if this is what the cost of winning is. And the interesting part is when Sabal starts to thank you for everything you have done and how he won't forget you, as if he never intended to share any of the power with you in the first place. And how as always he says how Ajay's father would have been proud of him. But the further we get into the game, the more brutal and unhinged both Amita and Sabal becomes, and it's probably a lot to do with the corruption of power. And it's not unusual for a revolution to have more than one leader, but when they are nearing the victory, it's time to play politics and kill off the other opponents who was their allies moments ago. Which is why Sabal wants you to kill Amita later on, as she has become a threat. You are interrupted as Pagan's forces are artillery bombing a nearby city which you have a timer to get to. You search for any survivors in the city, the ones you found say that Pagan's army is on the way and that you only have a small amount of time to prepare with mines and C4. And they are really trying to storm the town, with enemies coming from pretty much everywhere. The coolest aspect is that between each huge wave of enemies, the artillery will start to bombard the city again, and you need to find a bunker hole to hold down into until the barrage is over. And these moments are intense as hell, and this is a really long sequence with almost an infinite wave of enemies and 3 rounds of artillery bombing. While you are defending the city, Sabal and his men took out the artillery pieces and you are now in the clear. As Sabal mentioned in the previous cutscene, Amita has to go, and you have to be the one who kills her. And it's really interesting to see just how different Sabal is in this scene. He's aggressive and negative here, acting like an asshole to Ajay. Sabal warns Ajay that Amita will say anything to make you let her go and how you can't trust anything she says. So you kill the last of Amita's loyalists and enter the house. Amita is surprised to see you, as she knew Sabal was going to try and kill her, but she never expected Ajay to be the one to pull the trigger. She never begs Ajay not to kill her, she mocks him if anything. Maybe she knew lying or begging would not help her here, and she was just tired of it all, as she has no longer any purpose after losing the golden path, and she knows the future of all the young girls in the country. I decided to kill her. She is too dangerous to be left alive, and there is a higher chance of peace in the country without her stirring things up. And we get a fairly emotional death scene. It's time for the final push towards Pagan's last holdout, which is a super cool, large-scale battle between the rebels and the royal army, where you need to breach the fortress step by step, as they have MGs and cluster bombs at the first gate, which you need to take care of. And this is probably the most upbeat track we have had in this game. So the last battle is not supposed to be seen as anything tragic, it's more of taking a victory lap, as the war will soon be over and Pagan will be overthrown. And thank God for the buzzsaw, which has 0 recoil and just mows down the enemies with incredible precision. You need to use explosives to break down the gate, and the best part is how your allies will attack with you, so this truly feels like an all-out war, which was missing in previous missions. You need to capture 3 areas where it's pretty much capture the outpost and then hold the position, and you need to kill every nearby enemies who attack you and try to recapture it. I was not really a fan of having to wait for the capture instead of just killing all the enemies in defensive positions around these points, and if you leave the area, you will have to start over all over again. And after capturing all of them, you regroup with the Golden Army and you have to defend Pagan's army last attack, where you get a good position with a high caliber MG and the enemy is throwing everything at you with heavies, cars, helicopters to try and charge your position. And the mission ends with you blowing up the golden statue of Pagan, which he's not that happy about.
Really, Ajay? What do you have against my likeness? All those posters, Eric, my double, and now this. Am I missing a hint? Should I start taking this personally? That statue was solid fucking gold. Literally. I'm not being metaphorical. Do you know how many artifacts I had to melt down to get it made? And poor Eric standing there for God knows how long just to pose for it. Well, what's done is done. And dinner's nearly ready.
As the last of Pagan's forces are being cleaned up, the rest of the Golden Path can't follow you, so you go to confront Pagan on your own. And Pagan is acting like his usual leisure, calm self, as he does not fear Ajay pointing a gun at him at all. He gives a good speech about who he's talking to, the innocent boy who wanted to scatter his mom's ashes, or the complete lunatic who has murdered anything that moves in Kyrat. And the genius of this scene is that he gives a call back to the first scene.
If I was speaking to the first guy, then I would say, sit down, let's be civilized, enjoy some food. But we tried that before, didn't we? At our first meeting? You sat right here, Paul was off applying voltage to the nipples of your rude little +1. I stood just like this, and what were my exact words? Stay here, enjoy the crab rangoon, don't move, I'll be right back. Now, if you had just listened, just waited for me, then we would have come back here straight away, together, and scattered your mother's ashes. So then you must be the second guy, who didn't listen, decided instead to join the other monkeys and start throwing his shit around. But I'll tell you what. I call a do-over. I say you have two choices. One, you could shoot me, boring, or you could sit down, enjoy some food, and you and I will go scatter your mother's ashes together.
And it makes a lot of sense with your choices here, as shooting him would mean you have learned nothing. And it would have been just like you started the game, just leaving the Crab Rangoon instead of getting the other ending. Because if you stayed, we could have avoided this whole journey. So you get a choice, kill Pagan or spare him. Of course I did the latter, as Pagan is the one I would actually support in this conflict if I had to choose between him, Sabal and Amita. He reveals that Kyrat is actually Ajay's, and it has always been Ajay's. And how Pagan is, well, your stepfather, and he always wanted to give it to Ajay. He even encourages Ajay to kill off Sabal, and then both leaders would be dead and Ajay would be the unquestioned leader of Kyrat. And I believe the reason why Pagan did not tell Ajay on the radio before about him being the heir to the throne is because he wanted Ajay to become this lunatic, to see that he would have what it takes to rule the country, because I cannot for the life of me imagine Ajay ruling the country if you get the first ending. Of course Pagan would have guided Ajay to be the leader to rule the country later on, but I suppose that the plans changed when Ajay escaped the dinner party, and also Pagan is a mean son of a bitch, so it was probably a lot of tough love as well. Or some prison love, as he has mentioned before. So you both get to the location of Lakshmana. He says how the urn represents the old Ajay before he came to Kyrat, and once he spreads those ashes, all of the ties he has to the previous Ajay and life are gone. Pagan also reveals that Mohan killed Lakshmana. He killed Ajay's half-sister, and then his mother killed him. and how Pagan continued that killing until he realized he was only using Lakshmana as an excuse to do whatever the fuck he wanted, and how Ajay used the ashes to do whatever he wanted, and of course, it's fun. And it is kinda true that one of the big themes of this game is blaming your actions on different excuses. For example, like Pagan taking revenge on the country for the death of his daughter and how his wife and son escaped. Pagan even mentions this concept of excuse in one of the earlier calls when he radios Ajay, where he talks about how the Golden Path has squandered their resources as so much of the country's valuables are in traditions, such as statues and other works of art, while at the same time complaining about not having money to support education, healthcare and anything in between, when in reality they are not using their valuables at all. He talks about how the people are hypocritical and how they will make excuses for everything except themselves and blame everyone around them. And Ajay was only supposed to come back to Kyrat to spread his mother's ashes, and it somehow put him into the position as a revolutionary who killed anything who stood in his path, and he also takes orders from anyone like Amita and Sabal without questioning them whatsoever, and in the end he became a butcher or an assassin. The amount of blood Ajay has on his hands could label him as anything. Ajay could have left Kyrat at any point in the game, but maybe he started to actually enjoy killing like Jason did in Far Cry 3. But I doubt it, as there are no indicators that Ajay starts to like what he's doing, he's not doing any sharing, and whenever he does something, it's often in silence. Overall, it's an interesting dynamic throughout the game, but I do take issue with how I cannot really accept Ajay as being a changed person before coming to Kyrat, as nothing in his mannerisms or behavior indicates that he has changed between the first and last meeting with Pagan. Finding Lakshmana also gives us the last piece of the puzzle, as the last of Mohan's diaries is here, and now we understand fully the relationships between your mother, Pagan and Mohan, and we need to do a recap of what happened before the game takes place. So Mohan married Ishwari when they were both young, but Ishwari was still a child bride, and the previous Tarun Matara before Badra. And after a coup, the sitting king was murdered and the nationalists took power, which threw the whole country into a civil war between the royalists and the nationalists. And Mohan was part of the royalists. After many setbacks, he sought out and found Pagan who could help them win the war with all of his mercenary forces. And he also managed to bring the previous king's son, who he would install as a ruler after the war, but he betrayed them. He killed the son and he installed himself as the ruler and started a war against the remaining royalists. Mohan and Ishwari co-created the Golden Path, and Mohan said that Ishwari, the Tarun Matara, would be the head of state and ruler of the land after Pagan was dealt with, how the industries would be nationalized, free education and child labor would be banned. I guess Sabal did not read those pages. So that would mean that Ishwari would be the most powerful person in the country. However, until such a time, Mohan would continue to lead the Golden Path, and it's quite ironic from both parties here now that Ishwari became furious at Mohan for not allowing her and other women to fight alongside the men in the war, when she would literally become the most powerful person in the country after the war. But apparently that's not enough for her. She felt the need to make a difference. But also that if she is the most powerful person, she can't even decide a thing like this, which would mean that she might just be a puppet in the future. And to try and dismay her from going to the front line as a soldier, he tasked her to go and spy on Pagan as a servant, and she excelled at it. She managed to get close to Pagan, gain his trust, and started to leak information to the Golden Path. But really, Mohan? This was the plan? To send Ishwari to Pagan so that she could be a spy and see how brutal things are to dissuade her from wanting to fight in the war? So you are sending your wife to get close to Pagan, the charismatic leader who everyone seems to fall for, you included. Yeah, great plan there, Mohan. Also, I know that I've talked a lot about Mohan and how shit he is, and deservingly so. His view on women, his plan for his wife and son. It was not just Ishvari that was going to infiltrate to reach Pagan. He also told her to use Ajay, their son, to make it more believable. I'm not sure if he wanted Ishvari to die there or not, but risking both his wife and son for intel is something no good dad or husband would do. And the biggest crime is how he killed Lakshmana after finding out it was Ishvari's and Pagan's love child. He killed an infant. But I also have to give Ishvari a lot of shit as well here, because she decided to hook up with Pagan, the same person who has caused so much destruction throughout the land for so many years, the mass murderer. Okay? I understand that you can fall for his charismatic character and how he genuinely loved her, but falling in love and having a child with a dictator, and a brutal one at that, she knew all of this and still fell for him. She is not the greatest mother. Man, is every character in this game except for Badra an asshole and an awful person? So, you know, in movies or in real life, the women who get together with gangsters, dictators, mafia bosses, you know, etc, etc. They know exactly what they're getting into, and I'm surprised that these people never seem to get any blame or shit for what they did. They willingly looked away while their husbands did horrible and unspeakable things, so they could keep on living a good life in luxury and a feeling of a sense of power. I'm sorry, but these people are awful, and they should be more critiqued alongside their husbands, and they are almost never the victims in these situations. But yeah, I believe that Ishvari, just like Mohan, did some stupid and awful things. Also, imagine being Mohan and the love of your life, whom you think is an undercover agent, consummates a child with a person who is ruining the country and killing your fellow men every day. It's no wonder he went crazy and wanted to kill him. The issue is he killed Lakshmana and not Pagan or Ishvari. And in return, Ishvari killed Mohan at the Gale homestead, and she later fled the country with Ajay, who was on the free at the time, to America. And now we have another civil war, just like the one before. The difference are just their different perspectives. It's almost as if Kerat was cursed to always be a war-torn country. Maybe Kerat is just destined to forever be at war until someone who is Kalanag reborn comes, you know, like Ajay perhaps. That would be too smart. Now, everything in the game and Ajay becoming the so-called killer and hitman could have been avoided if Ajay just stayed put for the Crab Rangoon at the start of the game, which would have made Pagan spill the beans regarding, well, everything, how he was supposed to inherit the country and everything about Lakshmana. But the only difference is that when you and Pagan board a helicopter after spreading your mother's ashes, is that you both get on the helicopter and you're going to do some shit. Now, a contradiction to all of this is simply, why did Pagan not tell Ajay about all of this over the radio, how he is the heir, etc. if you leave the mansion? Well, although Pagan loves Ajay as a son, he still believes in tough love, and we have seen him putting Ajay with Yuma. I believe that Pagan did not tell Ajay on the radio before about him being the heir to the throne because he wanted Ajay to become this lunatic to see if he would have what it takes to rule the country, because I cannot for the life of me imagine Ajay ruling the country if you get the first ending. And that's also why Pagan stays with Ajay, because he was going to teach him how to rule. And now we can also finally talk more about Pagan and analyze his character and what role he played throughout the game. Pagan is an incredible, interesting character, because he is always acting calm but is ready to jump into a furious rage whenever something really pisses him off, like what we saw at the start of the game. He's an absolute narcissist, like come on, the man built a statue of himself in solid gold. He has made the country's religion about himself, as the radio towers always exclaim. Most of the times in the game where he is genuinely annoyed is when you blow up his statue of gold and when you kill his fake body double, but the angriest is probably when he talks about his boils on his face.
Now find myself dancing my own boils. Gary! Bring me some gauze and some fucking antiseptic ointment!
And it's obvious that he really cares about his appearance, as it's, well, everything he does, because he has a great fashion sense. The way he dresses is so flamboyant and it's immediately eye-catching as it just stands out. The hairstyle, which is dyed, and he acts just very American. So he has an interesting dynamic between being this logical person but also being a wild card, but not like Vas, as he was crazy all the time, while Pagan is more restrained and calculating and harder to predict. And I don't know how Troy Baker did it, but there's just something that makes me unable to hate Pagan. He's a terrible person who has done some of the vilest shit you can imagine, but he is so charismatic, which makes me unable to fully hate him. But I am not as blind as others when it comes to Pagan, as I have seen many people say stuff like Pagan was the good guy in the game. No, he was not the good guy. The main reason why people think this is because of his personality and how he treats AJ, as, well, it's his son. Pagan is the lesser evil, maybe compared to Sabal and Amita, but he's not a good person. Sure, him torturing Darpan at the start of the game with a fork or killing the soldier at the start could have been seen as him killing a person who failed his task and could have killed his son and disobeyed his direct orders, or torturing Darpan because, well, he's a terrorist. But the man has still employed people like Deplore and Yuma, who he holds to great regard. They have kidnapped and tortured and done so many heinous crimes, and he's still responsible for giving them such power and influence. And probably the most heinous act was how Pagan killed the previous heir to the throne, who was just a kid, just so he could take the throne and crown for himself. So when people say Pagan was the good guy, these people are the ones who would be tricked by a cult of personality in a totalitarian state. Do not listen to them. But it does seem that he kinda became softer and more of a better person after he met Ishwari, which made him more soft, as Yuma previously said, and he probably tried to be a better person as he finally had someone he loved, and especially after Lakshmana was born. And just imagine what kind of person he became after she was murdered and Ishwari fled to America. He had nothing left and instead turned his revenge on Kirat and the Golden Path, as he started to abolish its religion, tradition, and everyone standing in his way. And he probably wanted to remove a lot of these traditions due to how Ishwari was treated, as did Harun Matara, and being married off when she was only a child. And he just wants to burn it all to the ground. One of Pagan's better traits is that he cares an awful lot about AJ, whom he probably sees as his son, as he is willing to give up all the power and influence to give to AJ. This whole game was about giving AJ the keys to the kingdom and teach him how to rule. Also, one interesting aspect is that he talks with AJ a lot through the radio, how he and AJ's mother had such plans for Kirat. And it was probably a better place back then, as she wanted to give 20 students to study abroad and to bring their knowledge back to Kirat. But, as in many poor or unstable countries, most of these nations suffer from brain drain, where all the qualified and educated people flee the country to richer countries where the future is more bright. The question is whether or not Pagan became a better person during these few years when he was together with Ishwari, because from the dialogues, radio messages and what we have seen, I highly doubt it. But Yuma keeps on saying how Pagan changed and became weaker after meeting Ishwari, so I'm not sure whom to believe. I think it's somewhere in the middle, that he was not as brutal as his former self, but he was also not a good person at all, as we saw him killing all of the families of the students who fled the country and also hunted down all of them as well.
Did you know because of your mother, I sponsored an entire class of students to study medicine in Singapore, and they never came back? Can you believe the depth of that ingratitude? Paul dealt with their families here in Kirat, and I had my contacts in Singapore, track them down and find a fitting end for each of them, yes. Well, as satisfying as that was,
And I do believe that he maybe wanted to make Kirat better, but not for himself, but for Ishwari. But again, he killed 20 students and their innocent families. Damn, Pagan, come on. It's rare to have a main antagonist who does not want to hurt you, but at the same time it makes sense why so many of Pagan's soldiers are trying to kill AJ as well. What are they supposed to do when AJ comes at them with a whole arsenal of weapons to kill them? They have to actually try and defend themselves. Although I do find an issue with this, as the soldiers' behavior portrayed at the start of the game after escaping the manor and crashing the car, where we meet a patrol of Pagan soldiers who are searching for AJ, calling out to him, and how Pagan will have them killed if they don't bring AJ back. But if you just jump out in front of them, they will shoot and kill AJ, so what the hell? I would have maybe liked more situations where AJ is actually genuinely trapped and captured and brought to Pagan to have more dialogue one-on-one. Because even if I know Pagan does not want to kill AJ, everything in Kerat wants to kill AJ, so it does not really mean much for the game, but it works in terms of the narrative, I guess. But I can emphasize a bit with Pagan when he talks about how he came out a different person after laying Lakshmana's ashes to rest and how he let his rage ravage Kerat. And I think most people would have done the same if their infant daughter was murdered. But after some time, Pagan realized that he was only using Lakshmana's death as an excuse to do whatever he wanted, even if it was fun, so he later became a recluse towards the end. But after hearing about Ishwari's death and the inevitable arrival of AJ, he suddenly sprang back to life and his life started to have meaning once again. Also how he could now leave Kerat after giving it over to AJ, as he would never be able to leave it before someone else took it over. Or maybe he just waited for AJ all these years. So I know that some people might say that Far Cry 3's main focus was on the villain, which was Vaz, but I digress, as I still think the main focus was on Jason and his transformation and journey on Rook Island. But in Far Cry 4, the entire narrative and focus is on Pagan, which makes no sense since he and AJ are family. There needs to be a narrative that has equal focus on both of these characters, as AJ needs to react to what Pagan is doing and saying, and how more of his own history is being revealed, or even retold in a different perspective compared to what his mother might have said. There is something interesting here that could have been made if the choices you make during the Golden Path missions are between the two different philosophies that was started by Mohan and Ishwari when they created the Golden Path. Of course, Amita and Sabal say they were inspired by a respective person, but they have gone to the extreme with their own twisted philosophies, and if Amita is more like Ishwari, then maybe Pagan should react to you depending on what choices you make, because I don't think Pagan would be happy if AJ starts to take after Mohan. Because actually, I'm a little bit weirded out how Pagan never truly speaks ill of your father, as Mohan killed Lakshmana, but Pagan talks about Mohan as if he does not hate him. Because it could have been an interesting dynamic, as the more the game progresses, the more Pagan starts to not see Ishwari in AJ, but instead he starts to see Mohan, and maybe how he goes completely crazy at AJ for reminding him of his father. Also, I kinda love the introduction with AJ's mother's last wish to be buried next to Lakshmana, but why did she never tell AJ who it was? Because she knows that AJ would have to find out on his own, and I'm not sure what exactly her plan was, but considering how she probably hated Kerat, the Golden Path, and Mohan, she wanted, or rather expected, Pagan to pick up AJ and we would get the first ending, which was the plan all along, and this ties into one of the most obvious questions. Why did Pagan not tell AJ on the radio before about him being the heir to the throne, as that was the real ending all along? Well, Pagan is sadistic and prideful, and he probably took AJ leaving the dinner table as a slight towards his pride, and he wanted AJ to find out for himself how awful the so-called Golden Path are, and to make him strong and fit to rule the country, because AJ would be too naive and weak at the start. But after AJ has done the whole journey to the end of the game, he has, according to Pagan, become a much stronger and different person who is capable of ruling the country. So, after exiting Lakshmana and Ishwari's grave, Pagan takes the helicopter, and if you want to kill him, you can just kill him here, or you can just let him go. I do wonder though what Pagan's gonna do after all of this, if he felt freedom, that he could actually go wherever he pleased now, because he wanted to wait in Kerat so he could see Ishvari one last time, and with her gone, and Ajay now fit to the country, he no longer has any reason to stay, as it probably hurts him to be reminded of his wife and daughter. But Pagan is an incredible antagonist, and I'm not actually sure I can call him that, as you can't really say he's an obstacle or threat towards you. He's a loving, charismatic dictator who also happens to be your stepfather. The idea to have most of Pagan's dialogue with Ajay over the radio was quite genius, as it felt like Pagan was never far away and how there was always a connection between him and Ajay. Of course, I would have loved more scenes with him, as we only meet him in person 3 times throughout the game, and you could truly say that Pagan made Ubisoft commit to focusing a lot of their narrative and marketing around the antagonist rather than the protagonist. And if this was a good or bad thing, well, that's up for you to decide. And after this scene, you might think that the game is, well, finished. You get the credit scene, and you can of course continue playing afterwards, finishing off side missions or just doing collectibles. But there are no more main missions, but you do get one last radio message from Pagan. Not on your radio, but on the radio.
If you're listening to this, I am no longer with you. At the time of this recording, Ajay has just ditched me at a dinner party, and I am admittedly a little drunk. I have a plan for what should happen next, but the future is a fickle mistress. Regardless, I hope that I leave Kerat in better hands than my own. Down to the golden path. Fuck you. I always hated the loss of you. Sincerely, Pagan Min.
And what a mic drop. But there are 2 more hidden cutscenes that you can trigger, because remember, we never got a final cutscene with either Sabal or Amita, depending on your choice as to who should lead the golden path. So let's talk a little bit more about them and who deserves to lead the country. Sabal is pretty much Mohan Gale's biggest fanboy, who is trying to walk in his footsteps, who shares the same ideas as to what the golden path should be. And yeah, he's clearly a conservative, as his views of women are quite backwards, thinking as he will still allow young girls to be married off. And I don't see him allowing women the same rights as the men after he becomes the leader of the country. Specifically, after the way he treats Badra after she almost dies in the house fire, how he immediately wants to show her in front of the people to calm them down without thinking of Badra's feelings. It's as if she is only a tool and not a person to him. Throughout the game, he has saved Ajay several times. Hell, he even broke into the resort at the start of the game to break Ajay out of there. He's fiercely loyal and cares about Ajay, although it's probably because he's Mohan's son. At the start, he was particularly adamant about protecting Ajay and keeping him out of danger, but that changed after he saw what Ajay was capable of and started to trust Ajay as his right-hand man who could fix any problem, and always calling him brother. Though, the fact that he always references Ajay to his father Mohan and how he would have been proud of him is a little unsettling, as it feels like he's not seeing Ajay, but instead he only sees Mohan in him. Sabal also showed a lot of care about the people of Kerat, as he valued the people over the intel, and how he understands that the Golden Path must protect the people of Kerat if they are going to gain their continued trust. And this later becomes, well, ironic, as with Sabal's last hidden cutscene at Yalendu, where he is executing Amita's loyalists, yeah, not pagan soldiers but Amita's, how the person who went from every person matters more than the grand scheme of things is now willingly killing off anyone who dares to not agree with his worldview. And all of this happens while Badra is sitting on the throne as the Tarun Matara, being forced to watch this execution. Also, he seems to not follow Mohan's philosophy here, as as he said that Ishwari, the previous Tarun Matara, would become the head of the state after they gained control of the country, and this scene seems to suggest that he made Badra the Tarun Matara, but she is only a figurehead and Sabal is the one controlling everything. Also, something seems to be missing in this cutscene as AJ is slightly shoved towards Badra and it looks like we're going to talk to her, but nope, cutscene over? What the hell just happened? Like, this seems like cut content and I have no idea why. Lack of time and resources maybe? With Sabal as the head of the state, the country would be pretty much quite similar to a country with harsh Sharia laws where religion and tradition are the status quo, and the country would become a poor backwards nation which is unwilling to progress and move forward into the future, especially when half of the population will be suppressed. Just look at how he treats AJ when he asks about Badra.
Badra. She is Tarun Matara now. To be a cleansing for us to move forward, brother. Eventually the Tarun Matara will understand that.
And no matter how much AJ has helped him throughout the game, it's never enough for him. He only accepts people who obeys all of his orders without question, because otherwise he becomes a bit unhinged. It's quite tragic how Sabal's religious fanaticism and idolization of Mohan has made him blind to any other point of view, and especially Amita's, and I wonder if he would still idolize Mohan if he knew about him killing an infant. Sabal became an awful person by the end, but Amita would become even worse somehow. If Sabal was the hardcore conservative and fanboy of Mohan, Amita is the complete opposite, as she is more of a radical progressive who wants to abolish all traditions and religion, effectively destroying them. And yeah, she also fangirls Ishwari. She's willing to make the country progress in any way possible, even by turning the country into a drug state. And yeah, there's pretty much no difference between her and Pagan. Hell, they even start to say the same lines.
I'm very particular with my words.
Telling you to kill him. I'm being very particular with my words, Ajay.
Amita seems to not really care about AJ as much as Sabal, as he is the one who always searched for AJ and saved him several times, while Amita is nowhere to be seen really. Well, except when she sits on the bedside waiting for AJ to wake up. Although she does warm up to AJ and starts to praise him, and Amita is great at manipulating people. Sabal even mentions her so-called sub-story, how she was the first female Golden Path member and how she feels like no one takes her seriously because she's not a man, and how she was married off when she was just a kid. So the hidden ending cutscene with Amita is at Tirta, where you will see her ordering her soldiers to force conscript all children who are to join the army while the adults will work in the newly built factories, and she says that Badra is somewhere far away and how she's never coming back and how AJ should not bother looking for him. So yeah, Amita for sure killed Badra, her own sister, because she was a potential threat to her rule of Kerat. And it's interesting how Amita started off as a person who wanted to give women the same rights and stopping the tradition of marrying off children, to later force conscripting them and killing her own sister. And I get it. She was married off when she was just a kid, and I fully understand the reasons why she wants to ban the barbaric practice of marrying off little girls. I think most people would agree with this, but at the same time, this mindset has corrupted her as she is willing to completely destroy every tradition in the country, as she has started to connect the Tarun Matara and child marriage to how every single tradition in the country is bad and they all need to go away. And it's tragic how she always protected Badra, taught her how to defend herself and defended her from Sabal, as she just wanted her to be a kid. But in the end, kills her because she has started to see Badra as well a living tradition that needs to be gone. It shows how cold and brutal she has become. However, the transformation is too abrupt with not enough setup to truly, gut punch you, because for many, this scene just comes out of nowhere. We needed more setup before this last cutscene, and we for sure needed more scenes with Badra. I don't know, it just feels like so many storylines are cut short when they needed more content to fully make sense. As one of the main issues with the Golden Path questline is how fast it goes from both Sabal and Amita being good guys to completely unhinged and arguably worse than Pagan, and I find this problematic as we don't see much of this motivation from them except when it comes to their different worldviews, being how Amita wants to abolish a lot of traditions and religious things, while Sabal is staunchly conservative who wants to go back to their traditions and religion. However, what I am sure about is that neither Amita or Sabal are fit to lead or rule the country, and that's mostly because of the last cutscenes we get with them. And yeah, we can actually kill both of them afterwards if we want, but they're just like normal NPCs, so no cutscenes or anything, and it's kinda lame. So if neither is better than Pagan, we as a player would join Pagan in a heartbeat if we had a choice. And this is the main reason why so many people also defend and like Pagan Min, because he is the lesser evil compared to Sabal and Amita. So with all of this taken into consideration, Far Cry 4 should be a better game than Far Cry 3, right? That's what a lot of people say, since the gameplay, the visuals and many other quality of life updates are superior to Far Cry 3. That is true, but the cold hard facts are that the story, the narrative and the characters are severely weaker in Far Cry 4, and the main issue is simply the protagonist, Ajay. And to understand why Ajay is the way he is, we need to go back and look at the development of his character. So the lead writer, Mark Thompson, had one goal in mind, which was essentially to fix the main critique and discourse regarding Far Cry 3 from a lot of media circles, especially the game journalists, where they complained about the white savior trope, which I talked about before in my Far Cry 3 video, and just listen to what he has to say here.
We're fixing the problems that we thought we shipped with 3. We were definitely aware of some of the tropes that we fell into, unintentionally in some cases, intentionally in some. And one of the areas that we, like, it was almost the first thing that we did was decided how we were gonna address the kind of the white savior trope, right, of the outsider who comes in and helps simple people with his outsiders kind of more advanced understanding of the world, you know what I mean? It's like, because the first thing we did was design Kyrat as a place, so we knew the history and the culture of the place. And then we decided who the character would be and where he would be from. And like the first thing we said was, this guy is from Kyrat. No matter what happens, like that is, the most important thing is he is part of this world, he belongs here, that's where his parents are from, that's where his family are from, right? So when you go back there, it's a place you belong to. So everything you do is kind of part of your history and culture and background. But at the same time, we want to make him accessible and understandable. And the most important thing is, like, one of the key pillars of the brand, not even just the game, like the brand, is discovery.
And I'm actually baffled as to why they felt like this was an essential change. And I get it, because this kinda makes sense, because every subsequent Far Cry game after 3, the protagonists are native to the land and location where the game takes place. Takar and Oros, the deputy from Far Cry 5, the sheriff from New Dawn, and Danny from Far Cry 6, they are all native, and this is actually everything that the name of the franchise is not. Because Far Cry is meant to mean a far cry from home, hence the name where you end up somewhere unknown to you, but this concept has been completely scrapped. And there are also so many issues to this new mindset, as they can no longer do the fish out of water protagonist who needs to learn the ways of the land and culture in a realistic manner. I am also well aware that Ubisoft's other franchise, Assassin's Creed, has always had this rule that each protagonist is a fictional character who is native to the location where the game takes place, because the franchise is still fictional history and they want a lot of it to be as accurate as possible. But yes, this also ended with the inclusion of Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows, who was a real-life person. So it feels like Ubisoft is bending the rules, because what is the difference between Yasuke going to Japan and Jason going to Rook Island? Why is one correct and the other one is wrong? And I'm not a fan of it being wrong from only one direction. But the main issue I find with this mindset is how shallow the portrayal of diversity and inclusion is here, as AJ has lived his entire life in America. The only ties he has to Kyrat are his parents. He himself has no personal ties to the country. And according to Thompson's logic, the only thing that matters is apparently your ethnicity and skin color. And this becomes such a big problem, as AJ was only 3 years old when he and his mother escaped Kyrat. And Thompson even goes on to say how in Far Cry 4 the white saviors are the bad guys in this game.
We have a few outsiders and they're generally bad people. The Jason Brodys this time around are the bad guys. Like the outsiders who come in and try and have their escapist white savior fantasy are actually the bad guys, and you're on the other side of that. So it's like an evolution of us trying out our own ideas.
And I believe that he means Willis in this case. But considering that Pagan Min is not a native to the land, since he's from a triad family from Hong Kong, who also has no ties to the country but takes it over and is arguably a better ruler compared to Amita and Sabal, who are native to Kyrat. So again, I don't quite understand why the ethnicity of AJ was important here. I just cannot believe that AJ barely reacts or talks in this game, where we actually need him to talk. Hearing all of this new information regarding your mother, your father, and at the end, your sister. These are aspects that should change AJ to the core. And according to the main writer, it actually seems that AJ had a lot more to say, because they deleted more than 80% of his dialogue.
Will the main character talk in this game?
Yeah, I mean, he talks when he needs to, but it was funny, when we were doing the script review, almost immediately the first thing we would do would be like, okay, so how many lines does AJ have? Like, okay, alright, cut that by 75%, and then we would review it, and then we would cut out even more. Whenever possible, we would set up a scenario where we know, or we think we know how players would react. And so we would remove the line that the character would actually say, and then have the other person react to it.
So again, what were they thinking? I wanna see this, AJ, and I think the reasoning for this is because some people thought that Jason in Far Cry 3 talked too much, he was too loud, so they went in a complete different direction with AJ. But it's just, one is a compelling character and the other one is basically a silent protagonist. And I know there are people who can't believe that Jason was critiqued to be annoying when Far Cry 3 came out, but lo and behold, this review who praised AJ and shat on Jason. And I have no idea how they could praise AJ as a character when he's not even a character. Because AJ is more or less a blank slate and a silent character. Maybe the fact that he has to come to terms with how his mother was not the person who he thought he knew. For crying out loud, she had a child with Pagan. It would have been interesting to see how AJ's whole life is falling apart and how everything he knew before was false, and how he needs to find his own path and rebuild himself again. And maybe at the start he finds out that his mother killed his father, so he starts to resent her, and how he does not want to bring her ashes to Lakshmana anymore, but after getting more information regarding why she did it, he would be able to reconcile with himself and his mother to again finish her final wish to bring her to Lakshmana. And there are so many different topics to explore with AJ, it's all there, but it's just squandered for no reason other than the devs not wanting to make a protagonist that likes to talk. And this is also why so many later Far Cry protagonists are so boring. For example, there are so many scenes in Far Cry 3 where Jason is actively changing, for example how he acts when saving Liza in the car, the talk with Daisy, how he's starting to lose himself, and so many more scenes, but here in Far Cry 4, we get nothing. The thing is, AJ never had a journey or or something akin to the hero's journey, which is one of the most common stories in all mediums. He never changed throughout the game. The same AJ we saw at the start will remain the same throughout the whole goddamn game, even if the game tries to trick you into saying that AJ has changed. But no, that's a lie. He never grows as a person. It's insane to compare him to Jason, who had a great transformation and character arc. I just cannot believe that AJ does not react in this game when we need him to talk. And again, as I mentioned earlier, all of the interesting stuff was there. He could have rivaled Jason as a character if they only let him talk more. But there are also more problems with Far Cry 4. Which brings me to the other issue. The characters and the bloated cast. Because Far Cry 4 hosts so many more characters than Far Cry 3, particularly with its villains, where there are now 4 to follow, or 6 if you count in Amita and Sabal, while 3 only had Buck, Vaz and Hoyt, whom you took out in that order, and they are all much more memorable than, for example, Deplore, Noore or Yuma, and the only standout villain is Pagan. I think the game loses a lot of its pace, as it forces you to jump between missions with different people instead of doing several quests in a row which involves the same character to finish and flesh out their storylines, and as to not make them feel disconnected. And we only see Noore like 2 times before she is killed, and Paul only once, and Yuma only once again. The issue is that their deaths have no real build-up. We don't really understand much about them and why we want to stop them or even kill them. And when they die, there is not really much satisfaction because there is no real strife between AJ and them. Hell, Paul still likes AJ by the end. Noore does not really care, and AJ seems to have some sympathy for her. The only one he kinda hates is the one who hates him, which is Yuma. The issue is just that AJ does not care enough about her, while she hates him due to Ishwari corrupting Pagan in her eyes. It's just baffling as why these characters only had a couple of scenes, since they are part of the main antagonist group and main questline, while on the other hand there are 7 scenes with Yogi and Reggie and 5 scenes with Longinus. It just feels like there is such a huge disconnect how these get full-on cutscenes where next to nothing happens, and these side characters have no real impact to the overarching story. And yet somehow the developers decided to give these people the most screen time. It literally makes no sense. The game devs' resource management utterly failed in this aspect. And let me give you an example. And I know I'm referencing Far Cry 3 a lot, but goddamn, it's impossible to not compare these 2 games. Jason has to find one of his friends named Keith, and he gets a lead that a man named Buck has him.
You bought him from Hoyt.
Ah, him. He said his name was...
You're hysterical.
And we do pretty much 4 or 5 quests in a row for him searching the caves for a lost city and a knife. And between each quest we get a ending cutscene and a cutscene before each mission, which shows what type of person Buck is, and we see Jason's growing resentment towards him and how we the player wants to kill him for the type of person he is and what he has done to Keith. And compared to Far Cry 4 with Deplore, who is kind of the same. He tortures people, he's a sadist, and he likes to have fun with it. But I felt nothing handing him off to the golden path because he had never done anything wrong to AJ, and I barely even met him in the story. And between the first meeting at the start of the game and when we kidnap him is almost a third of the game between, and it diminishes any setup between these 2 characters. Yuma, who is supposed to be Pagan's right hand, she's barely in the story, when she should have been the focus when you breach into the north. Have her set up ambushes or attacks against the golden path as she is commander of the army, and after several missions with her where we learn more about her and Pagan's relation with them, etc. And how the last fight, just like the game did, and instead we get the last fight with her, but there's no build up to it and it makes no sense. She showed up once and now she is dead. Whoopee. Far Cry 4 had to either cut down on the antagonists and maybe just have 3 of them and remove Noore, Because let's be real, she did not really have much of an arc, and she was pretty much unnecessary to the main story. She's only there to introduce the arena. Instead, the game focuses a ton on the Golden Path missions between Amita and Sabal, and these are essential to the main story, but even they are too short. They needed to remove the side quest characters like Yogi and Reggie and Longinus and use their screen time towards something more important in terms of the narrative and main story. And the last big main issue I have with this game, and pretty much every subsequent Far Cry game after 3, are the hallucination or the drug scenes. And it pisses me off to no end that they only insert these scenes into the games because they think people like them in 3 just due to how wacky shit is in them, which is so far from the truth. As I have explained in 3, they were essential and important as they told us more about the protagonist Jason, his insecurities, goals and backstory. We learned what type of person he was, is and will be. But in 4, we learn nothing new about Ajay, and they have 7 of these drug scenes, where it's just wacky stuff everywhere. There's no substance. How Ubisoft still to this day cannot figure out what made the scene so great in 3 is baffling, and it should be studied. It's honestly insulting to the player's intelligence. It's as if they fired the writers of these scenes for Far Cry 3. I wanted scenes that shows how Ajay is starting to lose himself as more information regarding his mother and father are revealed, and how it changes everything that he used to be, some of his background as to why he is so proficient with his weapons, and hell, have choices in these scenes where he gets closer to either Sabal, Amita or Pagan, and how they are all different depending on your choices in the actual game. There was so much potential for these drug scenes to flesh out Ajay as a character, but instead they are just there for mindless visual spectacle. Embarrassing, Ubisoft. I know that throughout this video I have been quite harsh towards Far Cry 4, as the game is seen by many as the best game in the franchise, for good reasons. However, I don't entirely agree. Before I started these videos on the Far Cry franchise, I thought Far Cry 4 was the best game in the series, but the more I dissect this game, the more obvious the flaws that are revealed, and especially since this game has to be compared to Far Cry 3 as the game is basically Far Cry 3.5, which makes the difference even more stark. But even though I have gripes with the game, I still love it. The gameplay is much more refined and it feels smoother to play. It feels more like an open world game with more diverse biomes compared to Rook Island, which was just jungle, jungle and more jungle. And I would even argue that the setting is better as it's more beautiful. The enemy fortresses were a great addition to the game as they pushed you to the limit. The arena was an interesting addition which succeeded in an interesting new gameplay loop. Hell, I even think that Pagan is a better and more interesting antagonist than boss. There's just something truly interesting regarding the game's take on the Civil War and how often both parties are just as bad, and how revolutionary leaders might start out with a good cause and good vision for the country, but as the war goes on and the more power they get, they start to shift and get corrupted by all the power, and in the end they fall into the same trap just like the previous leader, and then the cycle continues once again. It might not be the deepest game in the franchise, but it's a blast, and it has something it wants to say, even if it did not succeed at every level. And I think it's easily one of the best Far Cry games in the franchise. I just find it tragic that the game became the deciding factor as to where the franchise would go. And speaking of going far from home, next on our list is one of the more controversial installments in the franchise. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. See you guys next time, and may Pagan's light shine upon you all.
Oh, good. You feel better now? Get it out of your system? Good. Maybe now we can finally shoot some goddamn guns.